GBNews does pay attention to those who are ignored by the mainstream media. The majority of this country whose forefathers fought and died to maintain liberty, to fight for freedom of speech.
The rule of law, the rights of property and democracy. This is the heritage that our country should be so proud of.
Which of course includes our Christian heritage. There's been a huge resurgence in the number of people going to church. Perhaps they're not finding what they're looking for, and they're looking for something a bit deeper, a bit more truthful, a bit more akin to Britain's Christian heritage.
That's right, get ready, because the most exciting night in general election history starts now!
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of March. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
After Sir Keir Starmer agrees to let the United States use British bases for defensive strikes, President Donald Trump says that he is very disappointed with the Prime Minister over the delays to access Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands.
It comes as the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 Iranian drones overnight.
Well, Iran clearly believes that Britain is in the fight, despite what Sir Keir Starmer says about limited defensive operations.
Britain is scrambling to draw up emergency evacuation plans as conflict escalates in the Middle East, with more than 100,000 British nationals stranded in countries under Iranian attack.
Well, there have been mass cancellations at UK airports to and from the Gulf region as the British government say to the 100,000 Brits that have signed up for their presence in the region, we will get you home.
Meanwhile, 2 people are injured after a man was seen carrying knives in Edinburgh. Officers say the situation is now contained and not terror-related. We'll bring you the very latest from Scotland's capital.
Global oil prices have risen sharply after Iran's response to US and Israeli airstrikes disrupting shipping, raising the prospect of a new energy-led surge in inflation.
And would you live next door to Krober or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
The Home Secretary exclusively tells GB News she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp, as today she scraps permanent refugee status.
I mean, would you count this particular moment in Keir Starmer's prime ministerialship as another U-turn? Because initially he had said, no, you can't use the bases, because of international law, which, you know what international law says about massacring people, about 30,000 people the Iranian regime massacred in, some 2 days. Now, that would absolutely, under international law, be reason enough for you to get involved and, try and assist. But for some reason or other, he couldn't do it until, of course, now he's U-turned, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it might be more fair to describe it as a partial U-turn, which is even more irritating to everyone involved. People who are anti-war, they dislike what the Prime Minister is saying. People who are in favour of the intervention, they dislike his sluggishness and his limited acceptance of the use of bases now. But I think this is really something that gets to the core of the Prime Minister's character. It is plainly obvious that the Iranians would have responded like they did to Donald Trump's first strikes, that our allies would have been affected. And after our allies were affected, then the Prime Minister says, oh, now it's defensive action, we can go back and we can turn around on these strikes. Now, I suppose the question is, why didn't he anticipate that?
Because he is, I think you're being very, very generous calling it a partial U-turn. To me, that is a U-turn. He said, no, you can't use our bases. I refuse, which he did refuse. And now he's saying, yes, you can use our bases. So I don't see a halfway house in there, to be totally honest with you. But I do agree with you on that. It gets to the heart of his character. Even before he was elected, he was called Captain Flip-Flop. and now he's just flip-flopping constantly. It's a total embarrassment. And everyone we spoke to yesterday, so I was on air yesterday when all this was erupting, and everyone we spoke to, from Israeli diplomats to people from all across parties, apart from some Labour MPs who obviously had to say what they had to say, agreed that Sir Keir Starmer looked weak and he was embarrassing. I mean, that's just, and those aren't even my words.
It's so interesting to see how this is all going to go, but of course we are just at the foothills of what could transpire over the coming days, weeks, even months. But do get your comments coming in. gbnews.com/your say is the way, as ever, to join in the conversation as we navigate this trying time in international relations.
Right, first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sophia Hill.
Nana, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's just gone midday. These are your latest headlines. While the top story, President Donald Trump has told The Telegraph that he is very disappointed in Sir Keir Starmer for blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out strikes on Iran. The Prime Minister announced late on Sunday that US forces would be allowed to operate from British bases against Iran, but only in a limited role targeting missile sites. Sir Keir's announcement came just hours before a drone hit the RAF Akrotiri base in Cyprus. Today, a spokesperson for the Cypriot government said that 2 further unmanned drones heading towards the base had also been intercepted. Meanwhile, the government is now preparing contingency plans to evacuate more than 100,000 Brits from the Middle East. GBNews spoke to Minister for North Africa and the Middle East, Hamish Faulkner, about the plans earlier this morning.
The many hundreds of thousands of British nationals who are in the region, we assess it's about 300,000, more than 100,000 have been in touch with the Foreign Office over the course of the weekend. In the face of those missile attacks, that recklessness on the part of the Iranians, we have given a specific and limited agreement to our United States allies in order that action can be taken against those missile launches.
Refugee status will become temporary from today, with all adult asylum claims reviewed every 30 months, as the Home Secretary presses ahead with her sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration. Shabana Mahmood has also confirmed that the grooming gangs inquiry is now effectively up and running, insisting that there is no one silver bullet to fix what she calls a broken system. Amid anger over plans for migrant camps, she told GB News that she would personally live next door to one if it was part of the solution.
But would you live there? Would you be happy to live there with your children?
Yes. Well, look, I think that if there was a military site in Birmingham Ladywood and it was taken over, I would accept that that's part of the solution. I do know I'm not trying to do down the strength of feeling that's happening publicly. I know that people feel strongly about it, but we are going. I think the hotels are posing an even bigger problem in this country, and we do, of course, have to put people somewhere.
Elsewhere, 2 people are in hospital following an incident in Edinburgh where a man armed with knives apparently attacked people. Police Scotland said that the incident is now contained and is not terror-related. Armed officers were called to the Calder area shortly before 9 a.m. this morning, and officers remain outside Cobbenshaw House, where the man is believed to have gone. Schools and nurseries in the west of the Scottish capital are due to reopen shortly after being locked down. The Conservatives have accused Labour of failing to protect Britain from foreign interference, warning that, quote, British democracy is under attack. The party claims that the government's proposed reforms could open the door to electoral fraud and do not go far enough to counter threats from states such as Russia and China. Labour rejects the criticism, but MPs are set to clash over the plans in Parliament today. The first tariff-free shipment of British beef has arrived in the United States, marking a milestone in the UK-US economic prosperity deal. The agreement allows up to 13,000 tonnes of beef to be traded without tariffs each year, a deal worth up to £70 million annually for British farmers if fully used. The government says that the move will boost growth and support the farming sector, with Northern Ireland's Foyle Food Group sending the first shipment. The Metropolitan Police is missing nearly half of its officers' DNA from its elimination database, along with more than a fifth of fingerprints. These records are used to rule out contamination at crime scenes, but gaps in the system could also hamper efforts to identify wrongdoings within the force. The figures have prompted renewed questions about oversight and internal safeguards following past high-profile cases. And rail fares across England have been frozen for the first time in 3 decades. In a move aimed at easing pressure on commuters, from this week, regulated fares, including season tickets and peak returns, will not rise. This will affect more than 1 billion journeys a year, as the government says that the freeze will help with the cost of living while supporting economic growth. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.340 and 1.142 euros. The price of gold is £4,026 and 12 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 10,801 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 9 minutes past 12, we can say that President Trump has told The Telegraph he's very disappointed in Keir Starmer for blocking him using Diego Garcia to carry out strikes on Iran.
Yes, RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus was struck by a drone just hours after the Prime Minister confirmed the UK would allow the United States to use British bases for strikes against Iranian missile sites.
Well, joining us with all the detail is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, I can sort of understand the Prime Minister's initial decision. Not our war, try and stay out of it, hope nothing comes back to us. Did he just forget that we've got bases in the region? Did he just forget that we've got allies in the region?
Listen, I think the Prime Minister must have quite a few splinters up his bahookie by now from sitting on that fence as long as he has been. And you're right, he's taking legal advice at the end of the day, but we've gone beyond that now. We've gone to a situation where Iran doesn't make these distinctions. Iran sees you in the fight when you put jets up into the sky and you shoot down its missiles and drones. As far as they're concerned, you're in the war, whether you're targeting their launchers on the ground or their missiles in the air. So all of this legal, tying yourself in knots in statements to try to project to the wider world that you're not actually in the fight when you are in the fight. It's understandable that you have a US president who is deeply frustrated, and he has launched a bunker buster at Sir Keir Starmer now in terms of what he thinks of that initial decision to deny the United States, our #1 ally, the use of that base to carry out these operations against Iran. As Donald Trump put it, he's never known of a situation like it between the US and its key ally to be denied the use of such a very important key facility that we've been arguing about for so long, about the deal that Donald Trump clearly now doesn't think is a good deal and has doubled down on that in the article in The Telegraph. The Chagos deal, it's got to be dead, hasn't it? Because we remember what David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, what other government ministers have said about unless the US is on board, that deal cannot possibly go through.
Well, and that would probably relate to the first article in the contract where it does say in the treaty for 1966 where it says that if Britain can only be sovereign as long as America is involved. Now, we're talking about international law because this is what Keir Starmer sort of cited as the reason as to why we can't use, why he wouldn't get involved. But I put it to you that international law also states that deliberate, widespread, systematic killing of your own people is a crime against humanity, and that is a breach of international law. So I'm wondering why the other international law trumped this particular part of international law.
Well, listen, to be honest, neither the Prime Minister nor any other member of the government has gone in and said why they're using the language they're using. That's us. And that's, informed analysts who are saying the reason they're not is because of international law. He's not even come out and said international law prevents us from going any further than we are. He's just saying, look, we're not involved in offensive operations, however, given just how abhorrent the regime is, given what the regime is doing and lashing out at innocent allies in the region, at British sovereign bases, at our own citizens in the region, then we can sanction our limited defensive operations, is how he has phrased it, in that area. But to me, and I'm not, of course, a fully trained legal lawyer, but I do follow security issues and, matters of conflict and war, and have done for many years. I don't see the distinction between, shooting a missile in the air heading towards you, or taking that missile out as it's about to be launched by that same country. If you think that you're justified in shooting something out of the air, then surely you're justified in taking it out before it gets... Because remember, if you take it out before it's launched, it's much safer to do that.
Of course, yeah.
If you wait till the missile's in the air, the chances are, especially if it's a ballistic missile, they're phenomenally difficult to shoot down. And not just that, even when you shoot a missile down in the atmosphere, it all comes down on the people below. It's much safer to do it in the country where they're opening fire on you.
And yet, in the Prime Minister's mind, of course, when this was all decided, early hours of Saturday morning, he was still reeling from a by-election loss to the Green Party, an anti-interventionist party who had made hay and electoral gains out of the idea of not being involved in this stuff. Could there not have been a part of the Prime Minister's mind that just said, not our war, we don't want to get involved, if I just stay stum and don't come down on either side or the other, maybe we can protect British citizens. Maybe we won't be attacked.
No, that's exactly right. He's trying to straddle both sides here. And at times you can't do that. Well, you can. As I've been quoting all morning, Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, he's been quite unequivocal. He's come out and said, no, I do not support this action by the United States and Israel. I think it's wrong. And he said that. Now, it would be difficult, of course, for us as the #1 ally of the United States to do that. So I appreciate the difficulty, but we've gone beyond that. As I say, I appreciate the initial difficulty, but we've gone beyond that. We're now at a stage where Iran is attacking directly our citizens, our bases and our allies. 2 drones fired overnight at RAF Akrotiri. 1 impacted the base. If that is not reason enough in any sort of legal mind as a justification to actually strike the launchers on the soil of Iran, I don't know what is.
I mean, isn't that the point? It's fairly easy for Spain and Germany to condemn this. I mean, they don't have assets in the region, they don't have bases, they don't have men there. They can sort of do that for free, right? Or indeed Canada and Australia. Same goes with them. They have both rhetorically supported the war, but they don't actually need to commit anything real in terms of their rhetoric. When it comes to Britain, we're different. We're not one of these middling powers. We're the sort of husk of a global superpower, right? We're the last vestiges of what we once were. So we do have bases, we do have assets, we do have men that are in the region and are involved.
Absolutely, in harm's way. Again today, an attack on the naval facility in Bahrain, home to the headquarters of the 5th Fleet for the US, but shared by the UK. And again today, it came under attack. A ship in the port, you're looking there, the very significant fire that was created from the attack on Bahrain a little earlier. A ship was struck in the port as well. Now, we're getting reports that 1 person has been killed there. So, absolutely, British personnel, British bases, British civilians and our key allies in the region are coming under attack. And as for these other countries, Spain and everyone else, well, they're all a part of NATO. And NATO allies are coming under attack. We've come under attack. The US has seen 14 of its installations and consulates all come under attack in the Gulf region and the Middle East. There's absolutely an imperative on anyone that's a member of NATO to come to the assistance of the United States launching this action. You might, of course, be very concerned, and I understand the people that are concerned about us going into Iran, but quite frankly, the sort of, the time for debating that is over now, or there will be an opportunity to debate it more widely after the fact. But now you just have to get in there and get the job done in terms of ensuring that the regime, which is a wounded beast at its most dangerous. Any animal, when it's wounded, is at its most dangerous. It's lashing out against all of those neighbouring countries there. I think, you know, get in, get the job done, if they want regime change or they want to bring the government of Iran round the table, whatever they want to do, just to ensure that it's over. And the more assistance, I guess, that America and Israel can get, even if it's just the use of the bases, has to happen. And at the moment, even though Keir Starmer has said you can use the bases, he's still tied one hand behind the Americans' back by saying, but you can only use the bases to go after the rocket launchers. You know, those missiles that are coming. So in a defensive capability, you can't do it as part of your decapitation strategy to go after the regime hierarchy. So again, as I say, it's one hand tied behind the back. It's gone so far, but not far enough.
He's not protecting British interests, I don't think, in that way, because if we need America's assistance in the future, which, given the weakness of our own armed forces, tragically they're fully kind of depleted, then we may struggle to get the help that we need. Mark White.
There's no doubt. Listen, the US is our #1 ally. We rely on the US. Our nuclear deterrent relies on the missiles and so much other technology developed by the US. So much of our technology, the F-35 combat aircraft, a joint venture, the AUKUS submarine deal that we are in partnership with the United States and Australia on. So many of these defence projects, defence intelligence sharing, all of the above. I mean, they have forward deployed bases throughout Europe and particularly in the UK. That's not just for their own good. They could retreat back to the US if they want. That is to our advantage, having our key ally still based here in Europe. But we know all the concern that Donald Trump has had about the European sphere, and he is, you know, perhaps a little cooler on that than some presidents. Well, this is one way to drive him further and further away from Europe, if that's the stated ambition.
All right, Mark
or even
White.
the non-stated ambition.
All right, Mark White, thank you very much for that.
Right, well, let's speak more on the issue in Iran now. Joining us is the head of news at Manoto TV, Tina Gazimurad. Tina, thanks indeed for joining us. Could you give us a little bit of an idea of what the mood is amongst the Iranian people? Because there have been conflicting reports, really, of what actually is the sense there.
Thank you so much for having me. The mood amongst the people, especially because I'm talking based on the calls that we are receiving on a daily basis from Iranian people all across the countries, hundreds of calls on a daily basis. People are really happy because the head of the criminal system was eliminated by Israel and Islamic Republic. You probably have seen the gatherings in London by Iranian peoples. You probably saw the footage from Iran as well. People on the first night when they heard the news, they were on the streets, they were dancing, they were celebrating, they were basically giving sweets and confectionery to each other for this. Imagine he's been the man responsible for 37 years, responsible for the killing, torture, oppression of Iranian people. So you can imagine that they're very happy. But at the same time, we need to understand the real nature of Islamic Republic. Islamic Republic is not like a classic dictator. It's not even authoritarian system. It's a totalitarian, ideological, criminal system who killed, massacred its own people over a few hours. I wouldn't say even 2 days, because everybody says over a few days or even 2 months they massacred people, but actually over a few hours they killed more than 43,000 Iranians. So you can imagine the mood.
Dina, how well equipped though are the Iranian people to take over and take back control? Because my concern is that the IRGC are very, very powerful, and even with the head of the snake cut off, it may be difficult for the Iranian people to sort of regain their own power. So how well equipped are they?
I understand your concern, but what is lost here is actually... Can you hear me?
Yes, we've got you.
Sure. I understand your concerns, and Iranian people are an important factor, because when I hear the analysis, mainly people are not part of this equation, and also the only chance and the leadership of the Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, who united millions of people all across the country and outside of the country as well. What we need to understand, I want to go back to the structure of the Islamic Republic. Islamic Republic is also like a mafia style system in which power struggles have always been ongoing. For the past 73 years, the person who managed and contained those internal rivalries at the top was Khamenei. His absence is a major blow. It created fractures within the system, and they are likely to turn on one another. So during the moments of crisis, for example, in the so-called 12-day war, when several top military commanders were eliminated, it was Khamenei who managed to preserve cohesion within the system. But now he's no longer there. And that is why the foreign ministry, this is very important, the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, recently acknowledged that military units are operating independently on their own. So the whole system is kind of disoriented. You were talking about the attacks at neighboring countries, reckless attacks on neighboring countries. So this shows that the top level of the military is gone. And now you can see that, they don't know where to, for example, they attack hotel in Dubai. Yeah. It's quite crazy, right? That's why, because the system is disoriented. And now you can see the power is kind of changing and shifting towards the Iranian people.
Really,
That's
really
what
interesting.
we need.
We're going to be following this one very, very closely indeed. Thank you very much, Tina Ghazi-Morad, the head of news at Monotto TV.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, sir.
Right, well, loads more still to come here on GB News. This is Good Afternoon Britain. Lots more coming up.
Yes, the police have warned the public to avoid part of Edinburgh following reports of a man with a bladed weapon. We'll have the very latest.
But next, we'll also bring you the latest from the Middle East as Brits are stranded in the war zone.
All of that and more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
This is Ellie, and this is the safari. These are the decent ones. This is amazing. Tell us about this.
Right, so this was the best part of the honeymoon. This is my favourite part. We're in Kenya, in the Masai Mara. That's the camp there. So it's immersed right in the middle of the
That's a giraffe, I know that one.
That's a big giraffe, yeah. And we saw the big five, and it was amazing. Oh, and we went to see a Masai Mara tribe, and this was me with the tribe, and they did a big dance for us, and they were jumping up and down, and it was amazing. And we took pencils and colouring. Oh, that's my husband there. That's Jared. And we took colouring books for the kids, and we took crayons, and they loved it.
Oh, that
we
was
had the best
nice.
time. And then that's an elephant. Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
And the best animal we saw, which I don't think we got a picture of, is a leopard, and we got so close to the leopard.
Camouflage.
We were eye to eye. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. Was it a bit scary?
It wasn't at all. It was very peaceful.
Yeah,
you're in an open van, but they're not threatened by the van or by you at all. It's very strange. And we didn't see the daddy lion until the last day. And Eamon was messaging me every day saying, "Have you seen the daddy lion yet? You still haven't seen him."
Who's the daddy?
And eventually we did, and they are majestic, the lions.
Very good. Right.
I recommend to anybody who likes their animals.
Alice, she's brought in all these pictures, and we brought in. We've sat here with popcorn, ready to watch it. We'll have to have a show of all this and watch all of this. And But
Get
anyway,
those snacks ready.
Anyway.
When can we open these then?
Well, I've still got to show you what other pictures I've got to show you.
If there's demand for it, but there's no demand. People aren't interested.
Then I'll just take this away.
Then we'll just take them home.
Take it to go.
But that was Ellie's honeymoon, which she delayed for 7 months or so, and then
Took some planning.
Welcome back to
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 29 minutes after midday. Let's continue getting the latest regarding the crisis in Iran. We're joined now by author Iran's Race for Regional Supremacy, Dan Diker. Dan, welcome to the programme. So, Dan, as you see it, now, I was speaking to a lady who was from a TV channel in Iran, and I was looking at it saying, look, how are the Iranian people going to be able to establish control? Donald Trump has sent the weapons in, and there's a kind of war now raging in the Middle East. How will the Iranian people be able to overcome the IRGC, in your view, and take back control, as it were?
Well, thanks for the question. The Israeli and American joint forces have leveled so much damage and degradation to the IRGC forces. And I think we're talking about a damage assessment that has not been made public yet, but we're talking about thousands of IRGC officials and operatives that have been eliminated, beginning with the Israeli elimination of the senior command of the IRGC, and of course the elimination of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. This has created a tremendous amount of doubt and disunity among the ranks of the IRGC. We do know that there have and continue to be a number of defections within the IRGC. We don't know exactly how this will turn out in terms of opposition leadership taking control, because there is still a lot of work to be done to further degrade and even dismantle the IRGC and their associated civilian security forces control within Iran. But I can tell you that with the hundreds of planes between the U.S. and Israeli forces really dislodging and neutralizing the Iranian anti-missile and ballistic program and nuclear program sites, it's just a matter of time, in my assessment, until the likelihood that this regime collapses and that an opposition leadership takes shape. We don't know exactly how it will happen. That's the nature of this type of warfare. But I think there's a high level of confidence that it will happen.
Oh, well, let's stress test this assumption, because there have been some fears that the IRGC is just a many-headed hydra. You chop off one head and 15 grow in its place. We know that it's likely that the Americans and the Israelis can likely get some form of air superiority, but no one is talking about boots on the ground. The IRGC is utterly brutal, has an almost total monopoly on weaponry. I mean, what if they just mow down protesters after protesters? Yes, we can always strike them from above, but ultimately, what if the IRGC is far more sticky than your assumptions presume?
Well, you may be right, but we certainly don't know. I would just correct one assessment that you've made. There already are boots on the ground. It doesn't mean that there are American soldiers or special forces on the ground, but it does mean that there are plenty of operatives on the ground within the opposition and others that are assisting them. That at a certain turning point, they'll be able to take control. Let's bear in mind that the state television has been hit. IRGC strategic strategic headquarters have been hit, and those sites are being continually hit and softened and degraded. So this type of strategic bombing campaign is very different than the Iraq campaign in which British and American forces took place with Allied forces in 2003. This is going to be led by certain opposition forces, some of which are armed and others which are being assisted by other forces already on the ground for a long time in Iran. We have to remember that after the regime has mass murdered between 40 and 50,000 of its own people and wounded in excess of 500,000, the public and those leaders within the public are still coming out, and they are watching and cheering and receiving great injections of encouragement and enthusiasm from the ongoing military operation. So again, this is just, in my view, a question of time. We have not seen a military operation like this against this murderous regime in its 47-year history, and it will continue until victory.
All right, Dan. Well, listen, we can now report that 4 US personnel have been killed. They have been killed. Dan, I wanted to get your response to that breaking news.
Look, this is the ravages and the tragedies of war. Unfortunately, claim the lives of those in the military. I just would like to remind all of us that in the last 47 years since 1979, there have been thousands of innocent victims that have been claimed by this messianic regime, and therefore, the loss of 7 or 8 American soldiers, as tragic as every life is, has thus far been a price that I think President Trump has said twice is worth paying. That sacrifice is worth making for dismantling the Nazi regime of our time.
OK, well, look, my other big concern is that the more desperate the Iranian forces get, the more indiscriminate their bombing will be. And this could end up being dragged out for quite some time. And in that time, we may sort of get a little bit of tiring of support for the United States and the allies who are going into Iran. And it could eventually turn the people actually against the forces that are trying to assist. Then you end up with a situation where actually the Iranian people then side with the Iranian regime, and then you've kind of gone in there and wasted your time. A bit like the result of Afghanistan, different way
around. I think it's a very different case than the one that you're describing. The Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs has been in very close contact with the highest levels of the Iranian opposition, both in the Iranian diaspora in Europe as well as in country. And the word that we're receiving constantly is that the Iranian people have decided that all red lines have been crossed in Iran, and the risk of what you're describing, which we call false patriotism, is not in the cards. I would add that the fact that the United Kingdom, France, and Germany have already expressed interest and readiness to join combat operations, some of them defensive. The UK has indicated that it would join the offensive operations, really testifies to the opposite of the fears that we're discussing now in this particular part of our discussion. So what the Iranian regime has done is actually committed suicide by its own will by attacking 6 Arab countries neighboring the Islamic Republic. So when you have a combination of the strongest power on earth, which is the United States, together with one of its greatest allies, the State of Israel, and the Western Alliance closing in on this regime, as long as it doesn't take years and years, which is the problem that we witnessed in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think that the chances are very good for a positive outcome, and an Iran that the Iranian people can lead towards a future of freedom, of liberty, and perhaps even of some sort of constitutional democracy, which is what they had before this Islamic Republic became the Islamic Republic in 1979.
Well, let's hope so indeed. Dan Diker, author of Iran's Race for Regional Supremacy. Really appreciate your expertise on this issue. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the discussion.
Thank you very much. Now, some breaking news. In the last hour, 2 people have been injured in Edinburgh following reports of a man with a bladed weapon.
Well, our Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has the very latest for us. Tony, what do we know?
Yeah, good morning, Will, or good afternoon. This is still an ongoing incident here in the Calders in Edinburgh. Around this area, the roads have been closed off, and by my count, just doing a 360 and where I am, is about 13 police vehicles and 2 ambulances where I stand. This is an emergency incident that was declared about 9 a.m. this morning when police came here to the Calders on the west side of Edinburgh. Reports of a man wielding a blade. Now, the local high school, Wester Hales High School, it sent out a text message to parents telling parents not to worry, the children were safe, but the school was on lockdown. And then over the course really of the next 2 hours, word had spread round, but police just in the last hour, as you mentioned there, have put out a statement to say that the incident had now been contained. There had been reports of 2 people with injuries, and I believe that they are on their way to the Royal Infirmary in Edinburgh for treatment. Where we stand just now is there's a significant public, police and indeed press presence here. We know very little about what's happening inside the building just now, but the crowd's here very much waiting for something. We think that the man in question is inside just now. There is a police van with its doors open waiting to greet him at the front door, but right now I think this community is relatively kind of a bit more at ease now, knowing that the number of casualties was low. However, of course, those 2 individuals taken to hospital this morning following their injuries. So the local councillor and the local SNP Member of Parliament have all said, please do not share any information online that's unverified. There's been lots of reports, lots of photographs and lots of videos around this morning, but of course Police Scotland putting on there at the end of their notice an hour ago that even they understand this is a highly traumatic thing to happen to a little small neighbourhood such as this. So people here just waiting to see how this story will end and when.
All right, Tony Maguire, thank you very much.
Well, lots more still to come on today's programme.
Yes, we'll have the latest from the Middle East as Brits are stranded in the war zone.
All of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Hello, yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Signs of spring continuing this week, some sunshine in places today, but the UK's kind of broken up into 4 different areas. We've got a weather front kind of straddling the UK, another one coming into the northwest with brisk winds and a few showers across the west of Northern Ireland and western Scotland. Then we have a sunnier zone. And then that first weather front providing thick cloud and some rain on and off across northwest England, parts of Wales and southwest England too. And then a final sunnier section across much of eastern England. That's where the warmth really is. Temperatures up to 15, maybe even 16 Celsius. It's pretty mild wherever you are, though, even under this cloudy zone. Temperatures getting up into the teens in a few locations. Feels a bit cooler with the brisk winds and a few showers coming into Northern Ireland and turning quite wet as we head into the evening across northwestern parts of Scotland. But to the east, staying generally dry and clear. Still quite gusty across the north coast of Northern Ireland with a few showers coming in here as well. Turning drier across northwest England as that first zone, that first weather front trickles its way down towards the Midlands, but fizzling out as it does so. So the rain turning lighter and patchier. Across East Anglia and the southeast will generally keep the clear skies through the evening, and overnight that could allow 1 or 2 fog patches to form, particularly across parts of East Anglia. Temperatures dropping behind that weather front with clear skies across Scotland and particularly Northern Ireland. We'll see a touch of frost likely here, rural spots dipping down to 0 or a degree or so below. Further south, with the cloudier skies, temperatures likely to hold up a little bit. But it will be a cloudier day then tomorrow across East Anglia and the southeast, parts of the Midlands, even a little bit of light rain and drizzle, but mostly early on. That should tend to fizzle out and the cloud will break up to reveal some brighter spells. Certainly a fine day further north, with many places looking dry with good spells of sunshine. Temperatures 9 or 10 in the north, 13 or 14 further south.
Thank you, Britain, for the thousands of you who are becoming friends of GB News each and every week.
Good afternoon. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. Road users should exercise extra caution on the A9 Kessock Bridge, where high winds make crossing difficult and potentially hazardous. In York, the A64 westbound remains shut between the A169 and A1237 York North Road following a collision, with reopening expected around 4:30. In Surrey, the M25 anti-clockwise is closed between Junction 10 and Junction 9 due to a police incident, causing delays of approximately 1 hour, with normal traffic flow not anticipated until 10 to 3. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's coming up to 1:45. Now, as war continues to rage in the Middle East, let's speak to the former Middle East advisor at the Ministry of Defence, Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mayle. Sir Simon, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Frankly, where does Britain stand today? What do you make of Sir Keir Starmer's partial U-turn on the use of our bases?
Oh, we can't hear you, Sir Simon.
You may be on mute.
Oh.
How's that?
Oh, that's better.
We've got you back. Thank you very much indeed.
Forgive me.
Right.
Sorry, Tom. I think Keir Starmer's approach has been appalling from start to finish, really, over this. We have a major conflagration in the Gulf where we have huge interest. You'll have reported many times on British interests there, let alone British personnel, civilians, tourists, etc., people who live there. And sitting on the fence has done us no favours whatsoever. Things have moved way beyond whether we're in a Trump broke this or did that. We have a huge interest at stake with our allies. We've now got, obviously, Israel, we've got the United States, we've got most of the Gulf states now fully involved, particularly with the strikes on Qatar, where we get vast amount of our LNG from, clearly from Saudi Arabia. And I think the Canadians and the Australians lent into this much more ruthlessly, frankly. And we've seen strikes on RAF Akrotiri. I see you've got photographs of that at the moment. So sitting on the sideline has not been a very edifying sight for a major country like the United Kingdom. Particularly given the very, very long history we've had of Iran threatening, blustering, killing its own people, killing people across the region. And this is time to kill the snake, I'm afraid. And I'm glad at least Britain has stepped up at this stage.
Right, yes, eventually. So, Simon, your thoughts on how the military action is currently being conducted, and if you were in charge, what would you be doing next?
Well, the headlines, Nana, as they always are, inevitably, are on explosions. The only ones we see in Iran have been in Tehran, and particularly, of course, the images of the Supreme Leader's compound being destroyed, and clearly the explosions we've seen in Myanmar and Bahrain, clearly in Saudi Arabia, etc. What is going on, of course, behind the scenes is the command and control of the IRGC, the Basij and the regime is being gradually whittled down. And the Americans, I suspect that is falling largely to the Israelis. And the Americans are basically hunting down the missile launchers. The Iranians have launched a huge number of drones and missiles, but they have good tactical effect. They're terror weapons in many ways. They're not really altering the equation on the ground. And in the meantime, the regime's capacity to continue this is being eroded and attrited almost by the hour, I suspect. But you won't see any of it. The only people who will know about it really are the Israeli and American intelligence services. We may be showing it also on the Five Eyes side.
And now huge concern over the supply of oil and gas, the price of oil and gas. We know that around 20% of the world's oil and gas goes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is effectively shutting down as we speak. Qatar Energy the largest single producer of energy in the world, of liquefied natural gas, I should say, in the world, has in the last few minutes announced that it will stop production of liquefied natural gas. We do not know how long for. This is having severe global consequences.
It will do. But it has, Tom, been a sort of sword of Damocles hanging over the region ever since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. And it's been accompanied, of course, previously by Iran's attempt to get a nuclear capability. It was always going to be the reality that if we did eventually strike Iran in a major way, and I put aside the 12-day war a little bit earlier, which was to an extent demonstrative but important, that the Strait of Hormuz, desalination plants, LNG, oil refineries would be very, very vulnerable. The reality is that Iran is striking out almost randomly now. The command and control, I suspect, has broken down. It is hitting targets that have been on its list for a long time. And the global economy and the region are simply going to have to roll with the punches on this one. It was inevitable that Iran would react. I suppose you could say it's inevitable and it's understandable the regime in its death throes will go for this. But there is a glut on the world market to an extent, or recession has driven us down in terms of the demand. And the capacity to reopen the straits is well within the capacity of the Americans and their Gulf allies in due course. But we must expect to have big headlines like this, I suspect, for the next few days as we continue to cause attrition to the Iranian ballistic stockpile.
All right, Lieutenant General Sir Simon Mail, thank you very much. He's a former Middle East advisor at the Ministry of Defence.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Plenty more still to come.
Yes, we'll bring you the latest from the Middle East, and Brits are stranded in the war zone.
But if you're in search of some holiday sun, not quite as far as the Middle East, here's the weather in Europe.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Spells of rain around the Canary Islands, also southern parts of Spain, but elsewhere across Europe, plenty of dry, fine weather and some sunshine to go alongside that too. Now, some brisk northerly winds affecting the Canary Islands, parts of Madeira, also southern parts of Spain, as well as some rain. This could be heavy at times, possibly even bringing in some thunderstorms. But elsewhere across Europe and parts of the Mediterranean, lots of dry, fine weather and plenty of sunshine too. This should continue into next week away from Barcelona, where we are expecting some showers.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. Oh, no, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good afternoon, Britain. With almost 100,000 Brits trapped in the Middle East, let's speak to Jack Carson, who is near Heathrow, with more for us. Jack.
Thank you very much. Well, we know that Etihad Airways and Emirates, as airlines, have said that they've suspended flights from the UK and to the region and vice versa, until tomorrow afternoon, they say. It comes as flights now being cancelled from the UK and Cyprus by EasyJet, they say, until Thursday. We know that here for London airports and across the United Kingdom, there have been thousands of flights disrupted over the course of the past couple of days, as the Foreign Office essentially urged people to register their presence in the region. More than 100,000 people already have done that, but it's believed up to 300,000 people could be living in those different Gulf states that have been affected by the past few days and events in the past few days. Advice very much is to continue checking the Foreign Office website, because in a situation like this, the scenarios are changing every single moment. We know the Foreign Office are working on a plan this very second of operationally how to be able to get those Brits that want to leave the areas out safely. That could be in neighbouring countries such as Oman or other places, but the problem they've got is all these closures of international airspace and being able to work around that to be able to properly and safely get people out. But it is causing disruption here, with thousands of people stuck and stranded at airports, both in the region and here at home as well, with those flights simply not going ahead. We know that many people in those countries are being urged to shelter indoors, if not, of course, being able to use the airports as shelter too.
All right, Jack Carson, thank you very much. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News.
Well, there's lots more still to come, including the very latest on what is going on in the Middle East, how it affects us here at home, with moves in the oil and gas price now shaking. We'll be right back after these messages.
You could be the proud owner of a brand new Benevan 122. This very latest 2026 model comfortably sleeps 4, comes complete with built-in kitchen, compact washroom, and is worth over £67,000. But that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £25,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like in the coming year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
There are at least 500 dumps scouring the British countryside, and there's a massive one, which we've been at this morning for GB News, in Wigan. It's been dubbed the most dangerous of its kind in the country, and it's on land partially owned by the King. It stinks. It's attractive. It will be a magnet for rodents, rats. Look at that.
You just think.
If you're listening on the radio, it is. Well, how high would you say that is?
Well,
18 foot high.
Concept, but yeah, at least meters and meters. And you can understand.
If you died in that, you'd be dead.
You would. Wouldn't recommend it. You can understand. Wow, it's taller than the trees. It is taller than the trees. It's taller than a JCB. How on earth did this happen? Well, joining us now from the dump itself is GB News national reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, we've just been saying how you can understand fly tipping, people dumping the odd bin bag or piece of furniture, but how do you go from that to this enormous piece of rubbish dump?
It's disgraceful.
I think that's the question on the lips of a lot of the local residents in this area, Miriam. People asking how and why this has been allowed to happen and why nothing's being done about it. We got the chance to speak exclusively to the owner of one of those houses, whose house is right there. His garden backs right onto it. Here's what he had to say.
Well, down here, you've forgotten. The council ignore it. They just skirt around the edges of it, doing nothing. When they cleaned up the one in Oxfordshire, they said they're only cleaning that one up because it was a fire risk. This has already been on fire once. It cost over £500,000 to put the fire out, and it's going to happen again. So, but just by their own standards, I think they should clear it up. If it costs £3 million, it costs £3 million.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of March. I'm Nana Akua.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
Well, after Sir Keir Starmer agrees to let the United States use British bases for purely defensive strikes, President Donald Trump says he's very disappointed with the Prime Minister over delays to access Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands.
And this comes as the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones overnight.
And it's clear that Donald Trump is angry. He's once again doubled down on his belief that the Chagos deal is wrong.
Meanwhile, energy markets are on the edge as European gas prices surge after Iranian drone attacks disrupt production in Qatar, one of the world's biggest exporters.
Britain is scrambling to draw up emergency evacuation plans as conflict escalates in the Middle East, with more than 100,000 British nationals stranded in countries under Iranian attack.
Well, flights to and from the Gulf region from airports in the UK have been cancelled until as early as tomorrow afternoon. The Foreign Office are working with those who have registered their presence in the region. The government say, we will get you home.
And amidst it all, 2 people are injured after a man was seen carrying large knives in Edinburgh. Officers say the situation is now contained and not terror-related, but we'll bring you the latest from Scotland's capital.
And would you live next door to Crowber or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
Yes, the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp, as today she scraps permanent refugee status. Now, if you were asked that question, would you live next door to a migrant camp, and you wholeheartedly would, you wouldn't sort of talk about other things first and then sort of go around the houses until somebody eventually tries to pin you down. You would immediately say yes if you really genuinely meant it. So, you know, and I respect the fact that the Home Secretary has come on GB News, as she should, because we are very credible, just alongside all the other channels. We are actually the #1 news channel. But I think that, to me, sounds like an evasive way of saying eventually she said yes. I haven't seen the full interview, but don't forget to check that out, because I'd love to see that.
Absolutely. I do think that if you are someone who is pursuing a policy that is shutting down hotels and instead placing people in dispersed accommodation and in dedicated camps, it's very hard to then argue on national television that you wouldn't live next to one of those camps that you're creating.
Would you live next door to a migrant?
Of course not. Of course not.
Mark, would you live next door to a migrant camp?
That's right. So you'll be there tomorrow, will you? That's great. OK, yeah. No, and she just said set up the camp right next to her house. Back garden, I think. Yeah, I've just been onto our local council now. And they've taken her up on her offer.
I think they should.
50 migrants heading her way.
Here's the thing. I think a lot of people wouldn't be too concerned. If you live near an army barracks anyway, it's not like they're building something new. If these locations were secure...
Hell no.
If people couldn't come and go at their own will...
If they were stuck,
if they were secure facilities, I think there'd be a different approach. The problem is, these are basically hotels without the bells and whistles. People can come and go as they want.
You're
I'm with you
exactly
on
right.
that.
When I was down in Crowborough and spoke to the residents there around the military base that is being used to house these migrants, many hundreds of them, they wouldn't be happy, of course, at the thought that, you know, there would be so many there anyway, but they would be a little bit more relaxed if they thought that the migrants were going to be detained within the camp and not allowed to leave. That's the issue. As you say, just like a hotel, you can come and go. And unlike a hotel, which maybe has a maximum of 150, maybe 200 migrants in a hotel, there you're talking up to 1,000 or more.
Wow.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? Well, listen, what do you think? Would you live next door to a migrant camp? Send us your thoughts, your comments. gbnews.com/your say. And just be warned, if you do say yes, they'll probably track you down and put one right next door to you. But first, your headlines with Sophia Hill.
Nana, thank you. Very good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your latest headlines. Top story, well, President Donald Trump has told The Telegraph that he is very disappointed in Sir Keir Starmer for blocking him from using Diego Garcia to carry out strikes on Iran. The Prime Minister announced late on Sunday that US forces would be allowed to operate from British bases against Iran, but only in a limited role targeting missile sites. Sir Keir's announcement came just hours before a drone hit the RAF Akrotiri base in Cyprus. Today, a spokesperson for the Cypriot government said that 2 further unmanned drones heading towards the base had also been intercepted. Meanwhile, the government is now preparing contingency plans to evacuate more than 100,000 Brits from the Middle East. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage said that he is opposed to putting British boots on the ground and ruled out Britain.
Well, if there are refugees leaving Iran, they will be housed in the Middle East. We can't take any more refugees from these conflicts. We simply can't. And if we help get a much better regime in place than the theocrats and extremists that have been there for 47 years, what you would actually see is a lot of people living in Britain who came from Iran originally would go back.
Elsewhere, refugee status will become temporary from today, with all adult asylum claims reviewed every 30 months as the Home Secretary presses ahead with her sweeping reforms to tackle illegal migration. Shabana Mahmood has also confirmed that the grooming gangs inquiry is now effectively up and running, insisting that there is no one silver bullet to fix what she's calling a broken system. Amid anger over the plans for migrant camps, she told GB News that she would personally live next to one if it was part of the solution.
But would you live there? Would you be happy to live there with your children?
Yes. Well, look, I think that if there was a military site in Birmingham Ladywood and it was taken over, I would accept that that's part of the solution. I do know I'm not trying to do down the strength of feeling that's happening publicly. I know that people feel strongly about it, but I think the hotels are posing an even bigger problem in this country, and we do, of course, have to put people somewhere.
2 people have been injured in an incident in Edinburgh where a man was seen with knives. Police Scotland said that the incident is now contained and is not terror-related. Armed officers were called to the Calder area shortly before 9 a.m. this morning, and officers remain outside the Cobbonshaw house, which is cordoned off where the man is alleged to have gone. The Conservatives have accused Labour of failing to protect Britain from foreign interference, warning that, quote, British democracy is under attack. The party claims that the government's proposed reforms could open the door to electoral fraud and do not go far enough to counter threats from states such as Russia and China. Labour rejects the criticism, but MPs are set to clash over the plans in Parliament today. The first tariff-free shipment of British beef has arrived in the United States, marking a milestone in the UK-US economic prosperity deal. The agreement allows up to 13,000 tonnes of beef to be traded without tariffs each year, a deal worth up to £70 million annually for British farmers if fully used. The government says that the move will boost growth and support the farming sector, with Northern Ireland's Foyle Food Group sending the first shipment. And rail fares across England have been frozen for the first time in 3 decades. In a move aimed at easing pressure on commuters, from this week, regulated fares, including season tickets and peak returns, will not rise. This will affect more than 1 billion journeys a year, as the government says that the freeze will help with the cost of living while supporting economic growth. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Good afternoon, Britain. We're heading straight to the Pentagon, where the Secretary of State for War is giving an update on Iran.
Operation Epic Fury is laser focused. Destroy Iranian offensive missiles, destroy Iranian missile production, destroy their navy and other security infrastructure, and they will never have nuclear weapons. We're hitting them surgically, overwhelmingly, and unapologetically. With every passing day, our capabilities get stronger and Iran's get weaker. We set the terms of this war, from start to finish. Our ambitions are not utopian. They are realistic, scoped to our interests and the defense of our people and our allies. Speaking of people, we hope the Iranian people take advantage of this incredible opportunity. President Trump has been clear, now is your time. To Iranian security forces, choose wisely. President Trump has also been clear about your fate in either direction. To the media outlets and political left screaming endless wars, stop. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both. Our generation knows better, and so does this president. He called the last 20 years of nation-building wars dumb, and he's right. This is the opposite. This operation is a clear, devastating, decisive mission. Destroy the missile threat, destroy the Navy, no nukes. Israel has clear missions as well, for which we are grateful. Capable partners, as we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force. America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history. B-2s, fighters, drones, missiles, and of course, classified effects. All on our terms, with maximum authorities. No stupid rules of engagement, no nation-building quagmire, no democracy-building exercise, no politically correct wars. We fight to win, and we don't waste time or lives. As the president warned, an effort of this scope will include casualties. War is hell, and always will be. A grateful nation honors the 4 Americans we have lost thus far and those injured. The absolute best of America. May we prosecute the remainder of this operation in a manner that honors them. No apologies, no hesitation, epic fury for them and the thousands of Americans before them, taken too soon by Iranian radicals. Before I turn it over to General Kane for the operational update, let me speak straight to you, the Joint Force, our warriors on the front lines. This is your moment. This is the generational turning point America has waited for since 1979, and since the rudderless wars of hubris my generation, our generation, endured. Don't listen to the noise. Just stay focused. Our commander-in-chief is steady at the wheel. We face a determined enemy, but you are better. But we must prove it every single day. History doesn't care If we're tired, if we're scared, or if the fight feels big, it demands warriors who rise anyway. Peace through strength, the warrior ethos, lethality, unity of purpose, those are not slogans. They're the beating heart of what it means to wear the uniform, that uniform. You think clearly under fire, you act decisively in chaos, you uphold the Constitution, and you uphold our country without hesitation. We are not defenders anymore. We are warriors, trained to kill the enemy and break their will. History is watching. Be the force you swore an oath to be: focused, disciplined, lethal, and unbreakable. We will finish this on America First conditions of President Trump's choosing. Nobody else's, as it should be. And know this above all, President Trump and I have your back, always. Through fire, through criticism, through fake news, through everything. We unleash you because you are the best, most powerful, most lethal fighting force the world has ever seen. May Almighty God watch over you, and his providential arms of protection extend over you. Godspeed, warriors, and keep going. General Kane, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everyone. The purpose of my portion of the briefing today is to update you and the American people on the actions taken thus far. The briefing will discuss the preparation, the planning, setting the force, the early operations, and how we're assessing the progress thus far. So let's get started. On Saturday, 28 February at 01:15 Eastern Standard Time, 9:45 a.m. local Tehran time, on the orders of the President of the United States, U.S. Central Command, under the command of United States Navy Admiral Brad Cooper, commenced Operation Epic Fury. As I said, I'm going to walk you through the initial phases of the operation. But first, I want to express my deep condolences and the condolences of the Joint Force to the Department of War personnel killed and wounded in actions thus far. As the Secretary said, they're heroes and represent the best of our nation has to offer. They're true examples of what selfless service means. Our deepest and heartfelt condolences are with their families, their friends, and their units. We grieve with you, and we will never forget you. Additionally, I stand here before you today grateful for each service member, planner, logistician, operator across our joint force, for our Department of War civilians, our intelligence community teammates, our interagency teammates who continue to stand in harm's way alongside us. I am proud of all of you as you take the fight to the enemy, and we are the best in the world at integrating, period. I want to extend my personal gratitude to the dedicated commanders and senior enlisted leaders and the enlisted members of the Joint Force who are fighting this fight across the CENTCOM AOR. In addition to Admiral Cooper and Fleet Master Chief Compton, I want to highlight a few today. U.S. Army Central Command Commander Lieutenant General Pat Frank, who, along with his team, are fighting the counter-missile and counter-drone fight. United States Navy Central Command Commander Vice Admiral Kurt Renshaw and his team, who are engaged with the Iranian Navy and projecting American naval combat power from the seas. And United States Air Force Central Command Commander Lieutenant General Derek France and his leadership team, who are crushing Iranian targets from the air. I want to highlight the support to the CENTCOM fight from other combatant commands who are directly involved with this effort, to include U.S. Spacecom, U.S. Cybercom, and U.S. EUCOM. I also want to specifically call out United States Transportation Command and U.S. STRATCOM for their contributions to this fight. We cannot project American combat power at the time and place of our choosing without both. And finally, I want to express how deeply thankful I am for the continued service and sacrifice of the entire Joint Force and their families. Their unwavering commitment and dedication are the cornerstones of this effort. So let me start with a few details. First, to be clear, as the Secretary said, this is not a single overnight operation. The military objectives that CENTCOM and the Joint Force have been tasked with will take some time to achieve, and in some cases will be difficult and gritty work. We expect to take additional losses, and as always, we will work to minimize U.S. losses. But as the Secretary said, this is major combat operations. So let me talk about the preparation and the planning. On February 28th, the full strength of America's armed forces came together in a unified purpose against a capable and determined adversary. The United States Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard, and our reserve components integrated across our combatant commands and began coordinated operations with the Israeli armed forces of an unprecedented scale. As the Secretary laid out, our military objectives are clear. Our mission is to protect and defend ourselves and, together with our regional partners, prevent Iran from the ability to project power outside of its borders and be ready for follow-on actions as appropriate. Across every domain, land, air, sea, cyber, the U.S. Joint Force delivered synchronized and layered effects designed to disrupt, degrade, deny, and destroy Iran's ability to conduct and sustain combat operations. On the U.S. side, this marked the culmination of months and in some cases years of deliberate planning and refinement against this particular target set. From precision strikes against key military infrastructure to persistent intelligence and targeting integration to the close coordination of the components across vast distances, this operation again demonstrated America's reach, readiness, and professionalism, and that of our joint united force. It was historic not only in the operational scope, but in the level of joint integration displayed across every element of the joint force. And as I said earlier, this work is just beginning and will continue. So now to talk a little bit about setting the force and setting the theater. On the order of the Secretary of War over the last 30 days to reinforce deterrence and provide the President with credible options should action be required, the Joint Force began to systematically reposition assets and personnel across the region. These movements ensured that U.S. forces remained postured, protected, and ready to respond decisively for any emerging threat. This deployment included thousands of service members from all branches, hundreds of advanced fourth and fifth generation fighters, dozens of refueling tankers, the Lincoln and Ford Carrier Strike Group and their embarked air wings, sustained flow of munitions, fuel, supplies, all supported with command and control, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance network. And the flow of forces continues today. In fact, Admiral Cooper will receive additional forces even today. This rapid buildup of forces demonstrated the Joint Forces' ability to adapt and project power at the time and place of our nation's choosing. I want to highlight a couple specific cases for you. The Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which many of you know was down in the Western Hemisphere, redeployed across the Atlantic to set the theater. The ship, her crew, their families, and the entire strike group took a deep breath and, as they always do, began planning to conduct combat operations. The integrated Reserve and National Guard forces have continued to demonstrate the value of America's reserve forces, including the Wisconsin Army National Guard operating in Kuwait and Iraq, and Air National Guard units from a variety of states to include Vermont and Virginia. In the case of the Vermont Air National Guard and the 158th Fighter Wing, they were mobilized for Operation Absolute Resolve and then were tasked to take their F-35As across the Atlantic instead of going home to be prepared to support this operation. The same is with our Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve Command tanker and mobility forces, who stepped right out of their civilian jobs to deploy and to protect the region. Lastly, I want to highlight the unsung heroes of warfare, our American logisticians and sustainment force, those who quietly work every day behind the scenes to project and sustain America's combat power. Our leaders from World War II were right when they said professionals do logistics. As regional tensions rose, the Joint Force elevated our force protection measures on the order of the Secretary and repositioned discreetly civilians and non-essential personnel designed to ensure the safety and security of our joint force. By the time operations began, only essential forces remained on our bases and in theater, all ready, capable to respond. So now let me move to H hour. At 3:38 p.m. on Friday, February 27th, the United States Central Command, through the Secretary of War, received the final go order from President Trump. The President directed, and I quote, "Operation Epic Fury is approved. No aborts. Good luck," close quote. In the region, every element of the Joint Force made their final preparations. Air defense batteries readied themselves, checking their systems to respond to Iranian attacks. Pilots and crews rehearsed their strike packages for the final time. Air crews began loading their final weapons, and 2 carrier strike groups began to move towards their launching points. Across the globe, our operations centers came alive in Tampa, Florida, here at the Pentagon, and of course forward in the Central Command AOR. As always, operational security was paramount as we sought to maintain and sustain the element of surprise. This operation was highly classified so that at H hour, the enemy would see one thing: speed, surprise, and violence of action. The first movers were U.S. Cybercom and U.S. Spacecom, layering non-kinetic effects, disrupting and degrading and blinding Iran's ability to see, communicate, and respond. At H hour, the beginning of major combat operations, 01:15 local Eastern Daylight Time, 9:45 local AM Tehran time, as dawn crept up across the Central Command AOR, the skies surged to life. More than 100 aircraft launched from land, sea, fighters, tankers, airborne early warning, electronic attack, bombers from the States, and unmanned platforms, forming a single synchronized wave. This was a daylight strike based on a trigger event conducted by the Israeli Defense Forces, enabled by the U.S. intelligence community. The first shooters at sea were Tomahawks unleashed by the United States Navy, closed in on Iranian naval forces, and began to conduct strikes across the southern flank in Iran. On the ground, forces fired precision standoff weapons, measured, deliberate, precise, and lethal. This was a massive, overwhelming attack across all domains of warfare, striking more than 1,000 targets in the first 24 hours. We are now roughly 57 hours into the operation. In the initial phase, CENTCOM's focus was systematic targeting of Iranians' command and control infrastructure, naval forces, ballistic missile sites, and intelligence infrastructure designed to daze and confuse them. Coordinated space and cyber operations effectively disrupted communications and sensor networks across the area of responsibility, leaving the adversary without the ability to see, coordinate, or respond effectively. The combined impact of these strikes, swift, precise, and overwhelming, has resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran. Over the course of the last 2 days, the Joint Force has launched hundreds of missions from land and sea and delivered tens of thousands of pieces of ordnance. The effort continues to scale. This included American B-2 bombers, which again, similar to Midnight Hammer, flew a 37-hour round-trip sortie from the continental United States, dropping precision, penetrating munitions on Iranian underground facilities across the southern flank and slightly deeper. Additionally, Israel has separately executed hundreds of sorties against hundreds of targets. Beyond Air Force and Navy aircraft strike packages, coordinated salvos of precision standoff weapons from across the region have neutralized hundreds of pre-planned targets. As I mentioned earlier, in support of these kinetic operations, U.S. Cybercom and Spacecom have continuously layered effects to disrupt, disorient, and confuse the enemy. I will note that this operation had several combat firsts, which I'll allow at some point in the future Admiral Cooper to talk about since he owns the AOR. While we've prosecuted a relentless offensive campaign, our defense has been equally important. Across the theater, operations have remained steady and disciplined. Once again, our integrated air and missile defense network is performing exactly as it's intended. U.S. Patriot and THAAD batteries, along with ballistic missile defense-capable Navy destroyers, continue to coordinate and execute intercepts with precision and consistency. I wish that every American could hear the voice communications like I have as these joint operations centers remain calm, focused, and cool while executing under fire over and over again. Collectively, these systems have intercepted hundreds of ballistic missiles targeting U.S. forces, our partners, and regional stability. The threat from one-way attack UAVs has remained persistent. Our systems have proven effective in countering these platforms, engaging targets rapidly. Each intercept represents hundreds of hours of training, readiness, and technology all coming together to work as designed. We will remain vigilant in the counter-UAV fight. And the defense of the region is not ours alone. As the threat grew, our partners surged in beside us. Air defense batteries in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia joined the fight, proof positive that years of training, trust, and hard-earned integration pay off. I am aware of the loss of 3 U.S. Air Force F-15Es overnight in the region. I am grateful for the safety of the crews, and we know that this was not from hostile enemy fire. As this matter's under investigation, I'll not comment further on this. Let me close. Operations will remain active across the theater and across the globe. The U.S. forces are postured not only to maintain pressure, but to respond and adapt as required. Operation Epic Fury stands as a reminder of what the United States military uniquely delivers: the ability to project power on a global scale with speed, surprise, precision, and overwhelming force when and where our nation requires it. What we've demonstrated over the past several days reflects years of investment in readiness, joint integration, and professionalism of the joint force. As major combat operations continue across CENTCOM, we remain engaged globally. America's joint force retains the credibility, capacity, and flexibility to respond to any contingency anywhere in the world at any time. To those who would test our resolve or threaten the United States, our allies, or our interests, understand clearly we can reach you, we can sustain the fight, and we can scale the fight, and we will prevail. To the American people, your joint force remains steady, frosty, calm, and focused. Your service members are trained, disciplined, and determined. We understand the risks of this mission and the weight of the responsibility that we carry. We also recognize that our families also shoulder the burden at home. You are a part of this too. I am proud today, as I am every day, to stand as a member of America's joint force. There is no mission too complex, no distance too great, and no adversary too determined for the men and women who wear our nation's uniform. We mourn our fallen, we honor their families, and we continue our mission with focus, unity, and strength. And now I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right here. Go ahead.
Thank you for your time. What percentage of Iranian long-strike capabilities are still in the fight, and what is our exit strategy here, and when will it be deployed?
Well, they have long-range strike capabilities, which we are hyper-focused on. The brief we got just this morning, Admiral Cooper knows exactly and precisely what kind of threat matrix he's looking at, the way they might change their techniques and how we adapt to that. So we're making sure the theater commander has absolutely everything he needs. I mean, one of the things the chairman mentioned is for months and months, even before we built up, we ensured that we had maximum defensive capabilities in theater to allow the president the decision space in the future. So even before this buildup in the last 30 days, we discreetly brought defensive assets in to make sure, understanding that there are Iranian capabilities. As far as time frame, I would never hang a time frame from our perspective. The commander-in-chief sets the op tempo and terms of this fight. As I said, it's on his terms. And we'll make sure that Admiral Cooper and his team have everything they need, not just to defend. I mean, the best defense is a good offense. And so we're aggressively pushing into that airspace over that southern flank to ensure that we control it and we destroy anything that moves that would attempt to shoot us. Think of it as shooting the archer instead of the arrows. That's where we want to be. And we have the kind of exquisite intelligence to get over the top, find that and destroy it. It won't happen overnight. This is a big battle space with a lot of capabilities. That's part of the reason why it's such a threat to us. That's why I talk about conventional umbrella to blackmail nuclear ambitions. They were building up this conventional arsenal in order to ensure that no one would ever block them from their ability to get nuclear weapons. So we're very clear-eyed about the nature of this Iranian threat, and we're going to get after it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the question. The only thing I'll add is that unlike an operation, a single operation like Midnight Hammer or Absolute Resolve, it'll take some time for us to conduct battle damage assessment, and the targeting cycle that CENTCOM will run will take those things into effect. Admiral Cooper will adjust his plan and fires accordingly to ensure that we're attriting that. He's focused on long-range strike capability coming out of the enemy, and that's a key and essential part of it.
Of the capabilities that still exist from the enemy front?
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say we're still doing BDA. Normally we'd be able to see a singular thing and we'd assess pretty quickly. He's doing offense and assessment simultaneously, so it'll take longer for us to assess than it would in a single operation.
Secretary Hegseth, thank you. Reagan Reese with the Daily Caller. Two questions for you. The president said yesterday in his video message that we will leave Iran when we complete all of our objectives. What are our objectives? And can you share more information on how the soldiers who were killed were killed?
Well, I laid out the objectives, as did the chairman. They're completely nested. I mean, Iran has an ability to project power against us and our allies in ways that we can't tolerate. So whether that's ballistic missiles and drones, so offensive capabilities, effectively their Navy, which would attempt to set other terms and impose different costs, drone capabilities, which we laid out there. And ultimately, though, this tying it back to Midnight Hammer, the president has been willing to make a deal. You can't have a nuclear bomb. Radical Islamists can't have a nuclear bomb that they wield against the world. He gave them every single opportunity. Then we precisely took it away. And even then, after that, they didn't have that. They didn't come to the table with a willingness to give it away. So ultimately, those nuclear ambitions, which never ceased, are something that had to be addressed as well. So that's a discrete sense of what's being addressed here to ensure that they can't use that conventional umbrella to continue a pursuit of nuclear ambitions. And then, as it pertains to the U.S. casualties, that particular incident was, you have air defenses and the lot's coming in and you hit most of it, and we absolutely do. We have incredible air defenders. Every once in a while you might have one, unfortunately we call it a squirter, that makes its way through, and in that particular case it happened to hit a tactical operations center that was fortified, but these are powerful weapons. So we certainly will do, as I said, moments like that, as we remember them and we take care of them and take care of their families, only stiffen our resolve to ensure that we do this properly.
Thank you.
Yep. Right here.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. I had two questions for you. First, are there currently any American boots on the ground in Iran?
No, but we're not going to go into the exercise of what we will or will not do. I think it's one of those fallacies for a long time that this department or presidents or others should tell the American people this, and our enemies, by the way, here's exactly what we'll do. Here's exactly how long we'll go. Here's exactly how far we'll go. Here's what we're willing to do and not do. It's foolishness. And so President Trump ensures that our enemies understand we'll go as far as we need to go to advance American interests. But we're not dumb about it. You don't have to roll 200,000 people in there and stay for 20 years. We've proven that you can achieve objectives that advance American interests without being foolish about it. Now, will we be bold about it? Are we willing to be decisive about it? Do we put months and months of planning into what kind of effects we want to achieve? Absolutely. But going forward, why in the world would we tell you, the enemy, anybody, what we will or will not do in pursuit of an objective? We fight to win. We fight to achieve the objectives the President of the United States has laid out, and we will do so unapologetically. Thank you.
Is there any significance to Israel carrying out this strike to kill the Ayatollah? And I wanted to know, what was your immediate reaction to finding out about his killing?
I think Israel did a great job in the conduct of that operation.
President Trump put a 4-week timeline
right
on
here.
it. Are you
Please.
saying that's wrong?
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned during the briefing, General Kane, that there would be additional troops sent to the region. Could you say how many troops currently are involved in this operation and how many additional troops are planned to go in this next phase?
I don't want to talk specifics because that would tip the enemy off. We have more tactical aviation flowing into theater just based on the time it took to get it out there. I think we're just about where we want to be in terms of total combat capacity and total combat power for Admiral Cooper. One of the things, though, that a commander, he'll consistently assess the trajectory of the campaign. Is he on or off trajectory? And then make an ask of the joint force, which will then develop options for consideration by the Secretary and the President to either increase or in some cases decrease the amount of combat capability that we have over there.
I heard the question about 4 weeks. It's the typical NBC sort of gotcha type question. President Trump has all the latitude in the world to talk about how long it may or may not take. 4 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 weeks. It could move up, it could move back. We're going to execute at his command the objectives we've set out to achieve. And what he has shown an ability to do that other presidents can't quite seem to have the aperture to do, well, I mean, Joe Biden didn't even know what he was doing, is to look for opportunities and off-ramps and escalations for the United States that creates new opportunities to execute what we need on our own timeline. So you can play games about 4 weeks, 5 weeks. He has all the latitude, and I'm glad he does, because there's no better communicator than our president expressing those things.
To the Daily Mail.
I've been in meetings with the president for the last 2.5 days. We know exactly where his headspace is, and he will communicate as he should exactly what he would like, and we will follow those orders. And I think everything he said on that is right down the middle.
Chairman, did you
Absolutely.
have
Yes, right there. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary. I left my hometown of Sakis in Iranian Kurdistan in 1996. Can you promise that I will be able to return home safely this year? And I have a following question too, please.
I appreciate the question. I'm not here to place guarantees on that, but I think the message the president has given has been clear to the people of Iran. This is your moment. The world was seized by these crowds and then seized by the reality of this regime killing tens of thousands of innocent protesters. So we saw the nature of the regime yet again exposed. We saw many of the Iranian people seek a change there. This is their moment to take advantage of it, for sure.
You served in Iraq and know that no American soldiers were killed in Kurdistan. The Kurdish people are very pro-American. Will you continue protect Kurdistan and Peshmerga as loyal ally of the United States? Why I'm asking this question? Because now Kurdistan is under attack by Iranian drones and by proxies in Iraq and on the region.
I think I can speak to allies generally in the region who we've been in constant communication with. We have been standing shoulder to shoulder with them, and we appreciate their capabilities. Absolutely. Yes, right here.
Hi, thank you. Cameron Arkin with the Daily Wire. My question is about some of the domestic threats, if any, regarding this right now. Have there been any concerns about Iranian sleeper cells, and kind of what has the Trump administration been doing to kind of monitor these threats?
Across the interagency, in full coordination, of course, we're paying attention to any potentialities there. This is a former regime, a regime that seeks to export that ideology and try to sow terror. We're ready for that. We've seen these types of folks before, and the American people can rest assured that we're vigilant on that.
Secretary, thank you. Kind of a follow-up on that last question. There was just this, what appears to be a terrorist attack in Austin yesterday. How does that change the operation at all? What effect does that have? And
it doesn't change the operation at all, and I know the authorities are executing exactly the way they should.
Secretary Hegseth, and one for Chairman Kaine as well. I understand, to your point here, that you don't want to broadcast everything for our adversaries to hear, but the American people also want to know what they're sending their men and women to war for. Is there a concern of this spiraling into a longer war? And then one for the chairman when you're done.
Did you not hear my remarks? I mean, we're ensuring the mission gets accomplished, but we are very clear-eyed, as the president has been, unlike other presidents, about the foolish policies of the past that recklessly pulled us in to things that were not tethered to actual clear objectives. So we know. We have plans, we have generals, we have chairmen, we have commanders, CENTCOM commanders, Admiral Cooper, who's executing very deliberately to ensure outcomes that I laid out are accomplished. But we would never, in front of a press pool, lay out how long that may take. The mission for our warfighters, which is what matters to us, is very, very clear. And they're executing it right now violently.
And just for the chairman quickly, I have one for the chairman. You said this is not a one-night operation. It will take time to achieve the goals. What would be the goal line here for you?
I think the Secretary laid out the military objectives, and that's what we execute against, is the military objectives.
Last one right here.
Enriched uranium is. Thank you, sir. As you've said, there are a large amount of U.S. service members that are in harm's way right now. What is your prayer for them?
First of all, my prayer for them is that I do pray for them. My wife prays for them, our family prays for them, our cabinet prays for them. None of this is done on a whim. Having been in their boots, having been in their shoes, having been in their flight suits, I know we think about them with every decision that we make and every recommendation that we make to the President of the United States. Those recommendations are made prayerfully. And when I pray every day for them and for this mission, I pray simply for the biblical wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it. It's going to take courage to follow through on this. There's going to be a lot of noise, and we pray for that, and we hope all of you do as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Listening to a briefing at the Pentagon in Arlington, listening to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War of the United States, as well as senior members of the military and journalists asking those questions and hearing some of them answered.
Right, well, we can bring you now some breaking news. GBNews understands that Dubai Airspace is reopening to allow flights to depart. The first flights to London Heathrow are expected tomorrow morning, and this comes as the government revealed this morning that more than 100,000 Britons may need to be evacuated from the Middle East, and that a total of about 300,000 British citizens are in Gulf countries targeted by Iran. We'll bring you more on that when we have it. So just to remind you of the breaking news, that GBNews understands that Dubai Airspace is reopening, allowing flights, the first flights from London Heathrow, expected tomorrow morning.
Let's return now to what we were hearing at the Pentagon. Joining us is our Home and Security editor, Mark White. Mark, a lot was covered there. I want to highlight one thing that Pete Hegseth said, because it's particularly pertinent to Britain. In a discussion about the partnership between the United States and Israel, he said this: "As we've said since the beginning, capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing at the use of force, America, regardless of what so-called international institutions say, is unleashing the most lethal and precise air power campaign in history."
If he's not talking exclusively about Sir Keir Starmer, he's certainly top of the list of pearl clutchers that Pete Hegseth is talking about there. And there's no doubt from the interview that President Trump gave to the Telegraph today that he is incandescent with the fact that the US have been blocked from using that key strategic base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean that would have been vital in this operation. And they're now being used it, now being allowed to use it, but of course Sir Keir Starmer is still attaching conditions. You can only use it for actions that would be considered defensive actions, to go after rocket launchers and alike. So not as part of the decapitation strategy of going after key regime individuals and targets and ministries and alike. And why is this important? Why is Diego Garcia important? Well, let me tell you about the real sort of world effect that not being able to use that airbase had on the Americans. They had to dispatch B-2 strategic stealth bombers from the Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri on a 37-hour round trip to bomb Iran. And these aircraft are vital to the mission because they carry these huge 30,000 pounds bunker busting bombs that they wanted to take out the ballistic missile capabilities of Iran, degrade it as much as possible. 37-hour mission they had to undertake, whereas coming from Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, it would have been a much shorter operation for them, much more doable. You can see why they wanted to do that and still want to do that, unhindered by the British government. Remember, Diego Garcia was a base that B-2s operated from when they took off and bombed the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan after 9/11. It was the base that B-2s took off from to take part in the 2003 campaign against Saddam Hussein in Iraq. So now we've moved on. We have a Labour government, Sir Keir Starmer, who does not want to allow the Americans the same use of that base because he's following the legal advice clearly that has been given to him by Lord Hermer. And he seems, in everything he's done, with the two very public statements that he's made and all of his ministers who have been on the airwaves as well, to be sticking absolutely by the letter of the sort of advice that the Attorney General has given him.
And this has kept Britain out of the loop. I mean, Tony Blair's strategy, love him or loathe him, was always to be close to the Americans, be inside that room. That's how you exert influence on the world stage. That's how you protect Britain's national interests and international security. And yet it looks like we're locked out of the room now, which is an extraordinary position to be in.
You can take the legal advice. It is advice, but, you know, you can have, as well at the same time, a determination to actually try to do what in the worldview might be the right thing to do with much of the world anyway. Of course, there are elements of the world, Russia and China and North Korea, the obvious sort of detractors here in terms of what is happening here. But, you know, you have a regime in Iran that's massacred 30,000 of its own people in a very short period of time in just recent months, an operation to try to overthrow that regime. There might be some legal issues, but, you know, what are you? Are you leading? Are you leading a traditional ally, the key ally? The US's supposed #1 ally? Well, clearly Israel has taken over that particular designation at the moment.
Well, he would probably, again, cite international law, but I don't know how he's getting out with that. Well, look, let's bring in Iranian dissident and lecturer in biotechnology. That's what Dr. Baghdad Yazdi.
Hello.
Now, look, I'm seeing this and I think to myself, well, on the world stage, how do the UK appear, given the comments that Pete Hegseth made, which were clearly, in my view, directed at the United Kingdom?
Well, it looks pretty bad, actually, really. You know, I mean, it demeans UK, actually. UK, Britain always had a reputation to be a world leader, especially when it came to politics, not just everything else. You know, when you have likes of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher and these heavyweights of politics in this country, we don't, you know, I mean, we shouldn't come to a point where we are ridiculed by Americans, by other countries in the world, that Britain is not doing its job properly on the world stage. And that's unfortunately what's happening. And many Iranians also are very disappointed actually to see the way that British government unfortunately at the moment is dealing with this matter. Yes.
I mean, it is extraordinary to see the sort of hand-wringing from the Prime Minister and the sort of half U-turn. It's embarrassing, frankly, given that we do have...
U-turn. This is not even half.
This is, given that Britain does have assets in the region, bases in the region, and frankly, that Britain is under attack now. Our bases have been under attack, despite our initial hand-wringing. Where does this move on now? How long do you see this war lasting?
Well, according to President Trump, it might take a few weeks, up to 4 weeks or even longer. But the way that they are behaving at the moment, the Iranian government, the Islamic Republic regime is doing at the moment, it seems that they would like to spread this as far as possible, even as far as Cyprus and attacking British base there and everything. So, but unfortunately, yes, they have got rid of Ayatollah Khamenei, and that's one step forward.
Well, what we're seeing on the screen now is a live shot of an explosion in Lebanon. So just as you were saying that it's spreading wider, we're now seeing this live on your screens. If you're listening on radio, there's a big plume of black smoke, aqua smoke, coming from a central part in Lebanon.
And this is important because Lebanon, of course, is where Hezbollah has traditionally been based, an Iranian proxy. Lots of speculation that the attack on the British base in Cyprus did not come all the way from Iran. Drones simply can't fly that far. Likely that those drones came from Lebanon. This is a regional war, more than just a specific one.
Absolutely. And look at the effect it's going to have on world economy, oil prices at the moment, of gas supplies, Qatar stopping its LPG production. So it's mayhem, to be honest with you. It's mayhem at the moment.
And this would probably be why a lot of the Arab nations around Iran try to pacify Iran with diplomacy rather than actually taking some form of action.
Yeah.
But now they can't get out of
They've passed that, unfortunately. You see, the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic regime, have passed that, red line, really. All these Persian Gulf states where their allies, Oman, Qatar, all these people, now they are being hit by missiles and God knows what. And Saudi Arabia, they have already warned Iran that, look, one more time you attack on us and we'll unleash our power on you as well. So it's going to be really, really nasty, unfortunately, in the next few weeks, and we have to expect that.
And yet, all of these Gulf states, and Saudi Arabia itself as well, I mean, they are vulnerable. Saudi Arabia ceased to prosecute its war against Yemen once it realised its oil fields could be bombed fairly easily, fairly cheaply and fairly quickly with drone warfare. If oil fields and gas fields get bombed, this is going to potentially have much wider ramifications.
One of their biggest refineries have been hit, Aramco, it's going to be really difficult for them actually to continue like this. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz being virtually closed now, 150 ships are already anchored in the Persian Gulf at the moment, staying put at the moment. They can't move anywhere. So you can imagine just 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, we are worried now that people are queuing up at the petrol stations. Imagine in 2 weeks' time what's going to happen. Gas prices, God knows what.
All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Bagai Yazdi, he's a lecturer in biotechnology and an Iranian dissident.
Well, do stay with us here on GB News. As you can see, this war is continuing to evolve. Almost 100,000 Brits trapped in the region. We'll have more after this.
A camper van and cash could be yours in our very latest Great British Giveaway. You could be driving away in this brand new Benavan 122. This 2026 model, worth over £67,000, comes with all of the mod cons you'd expect. And that's not all, as you'll also get an incredible £25,000 in tax-free cash to boost your bank account this year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text PRIZE to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, this is Jubes & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akua, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 2nd of March. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Nana Akua.
Capable partners are good partners. Unlike so many of our traditional allies who wring their hands and clutch their pearls, hemming and hawing about the use of force.
The US War Secretary Pete Hegseth takes a swipe at the UK whilst delivering a briefing on the conflict in the Middle East as he outlines America's determination to finish the job in Iran.
We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it. Their war on Americans has become our retribution against their Ayatollah.
Well, as some American allies are accused of pearl-clutching, Israel is continuing the fight. In the last few moments, there's been a large explosion reported in Beirut as IDF steps up its attacks on Hezbollah.
The United States has requested permission to use British bases. We have taken the decision to accept this request.
And that all comes after Sir Keir Starmer agrees to let the United States use British bases for some defensive strikes. But President Donald Trump, of course, says he's very disappointed with the Prime Minister over delays to access Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands.
And this comes as the British RAF base in Cyprus was targeted by 2 drones overnight.
Energy markets are on edge, meanwhile, as European gas prices surge after Iranian drone attacks disrupt production, particularly in Qatar, one of the world's biggest exporters.
And breaking news, GB News understands that Dubai Airspace has just reopened, with Emirates set to begin Middle East evacuations and the first Heathrow flight expected tomorrow morning.
That understanding will be a welcome relief to the thousands in the Gulf that are trapped there, with the UK government looking to try and how to operationally get them home. More than 100,000 people in the region have registered their presence, and people urged to follow Foreign Office advice.
2 people are injured after a man was seen carrying large knives in Edinburgh. Officers say the situation is now contained and not terror-related, but we'll bring you the latest from Scotland's capital.
And would you live next door to Crowber, or next door to a migrant camp?
Well, look, I mean, I'm in a constituency that's had asylum hotels as well.
Happy, would you, with your children?
Look, I do understand, but look, we've got to put people somewhere.
The Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood exclusively tells GB News that she would be willing to live next to a migrant camp, as today she scraps permanent refugee status.
Well, what an extraordinary briefing in the Pentagon that we have watched in the last hour. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, taking, I think, an unambiguous swipe at our Prime Minister for hand-wringing and pearl-clutching.
You know, this is clearly a swipe at Sir Keir Starmer, of course, because he has not, I mean, you know, he's kind of been pretty indecisive. But what was interesting on the Your Say was a lot of people watching and listening to that briefing and saying that isn't it great to have watching decisive leadership and a strong, you know, a strong direction and being told what's happening and what the government are doing. And they said, and answering questions. Answering questions that have been put to them by the journalists there and giving time for that, which, as we see, they are doing more so. But remember the difficulty we had getting Labour politicians on GB News initially. Now it's getting better, but it was interesting. That was one of the main things that people kept going on about, that it was good to see decisive leadership and the fact that constantly questions being answered.
Well, as we know, in this country, the government has cut in half the number of lobby briefings that are given to journalists in number 10 Downing Street. Meanwhile, over in Washington, D.C., we're seeing these very long briefings with not just questions, but crucially for journalists, follow-up questions. Not just, we're going to ignore your question and move on. Those journalists in that room were able to ask follow-up questions, which is the most important thing of any press conference. But it is fascinating, looking at how this gulf has opened now between the United States and the United Kingdom. Perhaps not since the 1960s has there felt this distance between British and American leadership.
Well, listen, stay with us. We're joined now by former Defence Secretary Penny Mordaunt. Penny, thank you very much for joining us. Now, just on the comments from Pete Hegseth, clearly directed at the United Kingdom, in your view, how would you describe the way Keir Starmer has behaved with regard to this particular conflict?
Well, I think what you're seeing is the difference between nations that are prepared to use their power and have clear objectives and an understanding of what is in their strategic interests, and nations which are still obsessed by process. And unfortunately, the UK seems to be in the latter camp at the moment. The most important thing is, having had the United States embark on this mission, that they are able to see it through. And what I worry about is the regime and its proxies will be trying to create as much pressure for the US to end this campaign early and leave part of the regime intact, not allow the Iranian people to step up and make this change. And I hope that the Prime Minister has enough guts to recognise that and resist that and enable the United States to complete its mission.
Now, of course, we've been speaking a lot about the British assets that are in the region. Our bases are incredibly important. But how is it that we actually have 0 Royal Navy destroyers in the region? Now, these can, of course, help intercept ballistic missiles when they're there, but our strategy, our perhaps Indo-Pacific tilt, has left a bit of a gap there in terms of naval assets in this region. Is this putting our own troops at risk?
Look, I have long argued, and many times on your channel, that we need to do much more to bolster our defences, and it's not enough just to have destroyers and aircraft carriers, unless you have enough budget to provide spare parts, you end up with vessels which should be at sea being in dock in long refits. So we're not doing enough. Keir Starmer has said that we should be spending more on defence, but he's yet to do that. Our own defence chiefs have given us 4 years to modernise and transform our armed forces. We know we need to do that. The public know we need to do that. The Treasury doesn't start turning on the taps until year 5. So that's a disastrous situation. But what I would say is our armed forces still do an incredible job with the capabilities that they have. My thoughts are with them at the moment, particularly in Akrotiri, and they will do us proud, I'm sure, over the coming weeks.
Now, Penny, it was under your government's watch that the negotiations to kind of give away, as it were, at great cost to the taxpayer, Diego Garcia. How important is it that we keep that as a strategic base and not go through with the deal that Keir Starmer is proposing?
It's vital, and it's vital not just to us, but to our allies as well. The US not being able to use that base will have doubled the time their aircraft need to be in the air, putting air crews under additional pressure. This has been a running issue for many years. I do not believe that the current treaty, the wording in it, which goes into gratuitous detail to stop us carrying out pretty much every aspect of any military operation you would want to undertake. I don't think that was penned by my government, and I have been campaigning for many, many months here in the UK, but also in the US, to kill off this so-called deal. It would mean that we wouldn't be able to use our own contractors. We would have to share defence planning information. We couldn't put sensors or maritime installations in the water, and we would lose control over the electromagnetic spectrum, which is absolutely vital for communication. So if you set out to write a treaty that would prevent absolutely every single aspect of a military operation, it would be the one the government has arrived at.
Now, clearly, the Prime Minister did not get this whole operation off on the right foot. You can see that through his partial U-turn, bases now being allowed to be used, but for specific and limited purposes. I mean, is Britain doing enough to, frankly, keep our servicemen safe? And what would you suggest the Prime Minister do in the coming days and weeks?
Well, I would suggest he think long and hard about what his job is and the responsibilities he has. I looked at those initial 2 statements from the Prime Minister, and I was trying to figure out what was driving this. And I'm afraid the conclusion I have come to is that it is more about a message he wants to send to his backbenchers than it is a message to our foes and our closest friends and allies. In any operation, even if we're doing an operation alongside the US, there will still be particular tasks within that we choose not to do or that we volunteer for. And that's because we have different targeting policies, we have different capabilities, and so you will always have those judgments. But in this, the UK was always going to have to be adopting, at the very least, a defensive posture. We were going to have planes in the sky. We were going to be wanting to protect our own interests and, most likely, interests of our allies in the region. I don't see why, apart from sending a message to your backbenchers, the Prime Minister made such an issue about the uses of these bases. I think it was unnecessary, and I think that's why he did it. And I'm afraid it has sent a terrible message back to our friends in the US at a time when we're trying to convince them that their investments in NATO and European bases are good value and should continue.
How much damage, Penny, do you think this has done to the so-called special relationship that we have enjoyed for many years, many decades with the United States?
I think the special relationship is still very strong. I see it in our military, I see it in our businesses. I think the special relationship is alive and well and will continue to do so. But I'm afraid the Prime Minister, because he is weak at home, is weak on the international stage too. And that I hate to see for the UK. And Keir Starmer either needs to find a backbone and find the guts he needs to do this job that he's stepped up to do, or he needs to clear off.
Strong words indeed. Penny, before we let you go, I've got to ask about international markets and particularly the price of oil and gas. A lot of people at home are going to be very, very worried about what this means, not just for the cost of filling up their car, but actually, frankly, for the economic security of this country, for inflation in the short, medium and indeed long term too. Just how significant is the Strait of Hormuz that we keep hearing so much about? Qatar in particular for their LNG production. This is a really, really stark future the world is staring at.
Look, I think one thing I would say is we need to get this in perspective. This is clearly something very serious that is going on now, and insurers will be wanting shipping, to not pass through the straits. That's very understandable. But these straits are under attack all the time. The average number of attacks that Iran makes on an annual basis against shipping with a British interest involved is about 500 attacks a year. So this has always been a very hot part of the world in that respect. Clearly, there is going to be a knock-on effect both on oil prices, but also other logistics as well, and also an impact on illicit oil too, which we shouldn't forget. What I would say to people who I know were already thinking about this at the weekend, I saw it in petrol stations in my own local area, is that it's what I said at the outset. Having embarked on this, the US has to see it through. And even if life becomes difficult, we must deal with that, because the consequences of wounding this regime are going to be horrific. It's going to mean, I think, potentially mass murder of its own citizens. We must do a good job in keeping those straits open. The port of Jaffa, which was on your television screens at the weekend, we have a lot of British assets there that are focused on that maritime security piece. And that is something that Britain can do to really help this situation, is use our expertise and intelligence to keep shipping routes open.
All right, Penny Mordaunt, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. She's the former Defence Secretary. Thank you very much, Penny.
Well, joining us now is our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, we've been looking at the explosion there in Beirut. Is this likely to be the IDF attacking Hezbollah?
Absolutely. I mean, almost certainly that's the case. The IDF has announced a fresh wave of strikes, and they say are Hezbollah targets throughout Lebanon, so not just in Beirut, which, of course, is an area of headquarters. They've targeted consistently since the start of the war on October the 7th, when Hezbollah joined in that conflict soon after, and they re-entered the war after a period of ceasefire last night, with 6 missiles being fired from southern Lebanon towards northern Israel. What was remarkable about some of the footage that was being shared by colleagues in Tel Aviv at I-24 News, a partner agency we work with, they were showing footage of Lebanese nationals shouting "no, no, no" as these missiles were being fired from southern Lebanon. Latest pictures here of the IDF strikes in Beirut. They said they are targeting Hezbollah facilities and personnel throughout Lebanon. I'm sure we'll see more footage of strikes like these soon. They have been conducting sorties since last night. Another loud explosion there heard from a second explosion in this strike. We have seen, as I was saying, 6 missiles fired from southern Lebanon last night. 1 was intercepted, the other 5 fell in open areas. And it comes, Tom and Nana, as we're discussing about the wider Iranian proxies joining in with this conflict. Almost 48 hours after it started, a very delayed reaction, because there is now this increasing concern about strikes on oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, leading to that kingdom now considering joining this war against Iran. Very, very much in a defensive posture at the moment, but the Houthi militia, that terrorist proxy of Iran in Yemen, highly likely to be behind the drone strike that struck the Ras Chanura oil refinery earlier this morning. We know that the Houthis were regularly firing missiles towards these oil facilities during the major Saudi-led intervention in Yemen over the last decade, and this has angered a lot of people in Saudi Arabia. I'm just getting an update, actually, from a Saudi security source saying that they don't think that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will attack Iran, that is, unless there is an increase in the strikes on Saudi Arabia. At this moment, this security source telling me they don't think that the kingdom will strike back. And they've also added, I think if there is a strike on Iran from Saudi Arabia, it will come under a collective Gulf Cooperation Council response. That's the wider body, a sort of an EU for the Arabian Peninsula. They've also said that there is not a belief inside Saudi Arabia that Iran currently poses an existential threat to the country, which is why they did not allow Saudi airspace to be used for the original attack on Saturday morning. But regardless of the permissions that the Saudis did or did not grant, it's very much now in the fight, as is, of course, Lebanon. And with Lebanon being involved comes in the United Kingdom. RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus, 2 drone attacks. We broke it last night as that first strike was reported yesterday evening around midnight at RAF Akrotiri. And I'm so glad you asked that question, Tom, of the former Defence Minister Penny Mordaunt about our lack of ability to intercept those missiles, because we only have 1 Royal Navy destroyer currently available for operations. The other 5, there are only 6, the other 5 are either being refitted or undergoing maintenance or repairs at bases back in Britain. Now, the best asset we have for intercepting ballistic missiles are those Royal Navy destroyers. We had one in the Red Sea when we were dealing with those Houthi attacks on international shipping in 2023, 2024. HMS Diamond was being lauded by the MOD as they were demonstrating the British efforts to protect maritime shipping and our interests in the region. Now they have no such ship to point to. We're not in the area, which puts RAF Akrotiri and other British assets in the region highly susceptible to ballistic missiles if those are fired towards that base. Now, the RAF Typhoons that are there and other ground-based air defence systems can intercept the small drones or the cruise missiles, which fly at a much slower speed than ballistic missiles. But should that asset be deployed against the United Kingdom, there is a pretty shocking susceptibility to that fire. After decades of penny pinching and fighting against insurgents, this is a real war with adversaries who have real assets, not just IEDs and booby traps. These are ballistic missiles. Britain, which is currently operating some strange sort of straddling of 2 positions at once with supporting but not supporting the US intervention, will also, it seems, have to rely on allies if it wants to keep its assets safe in the region.
Well, exactly. So this is why it was actually extremely unwise for Keir Starmer to sort of dither about whether or not he should be helping the United States. Is this something that you believe, Charlie, that we may in this country regret? Sort of the way that he's been so lacklustre in his approach towards this?
Well, the question is, what do we want out of the relationship with the United States? That is pretty much a one-way deal in terms of assets we benefit from in terms of intelligence. This is a major operation for the US military, generational, as we've heard the Secretary of War saying in the last hour. And what has Britain's role in that generational moment be? Well, it's been eventually to permit some defensive operations. I know we talk often about how the special relationship doesn't really exist anymore and that there is actually a weakness between the 2 parties, that we provide certain things, they provide certain things. But this could severely frost over the relationship as it stands, particularly because the United Kingdom is relying so much on the US for limited tariffs and also access to wider American intelligence. We are going to rely on them and other partners in the region to keep our people safe. People forward deployed in Qatar, forward deployed in Iraq and other countries in the region. If we're going to rely on them, there should be a sort of a quid pro quo relationship where they can also rely on us.
Well, it'll be fascinating to see how this develops. I can't see that the Prime Minister's position, fresh as it is after what, it changed after 72 hours, it's now got this sort of halfway position. I can't see this staying. I think the Prime Minister's going to have to make another statement at some point. I
just think it's so embarrassing, really, for other countries. So far, everyone we've spoken to has come from another country looking at Britain and their involvement in our involvement in this conflict have been quite disappointed, to say the least, with the behaviour that Keir Starmer has demonstrated.
Well, Charlie Peters, thank you very much indeed. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and still lots more to come.
Yes, GB News understands that Dubai Airspace has just reopened, with Emirates set to begin Middle East evacuations, and the first Heathrow flight expected tomorrow morning. Also to come.
Energy markets are on edge as European gas prices surge after the Iranian drone attacks disrupting production in Qatar, one of the world's biggest exporters.
Well, all of that and much more to come. You're with GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
We can take you to our latest pictures of Beirut, where further explosions have been seen and indeed heard. Our national reporter Charlie Peters is with us in the studio. Charlie.
Yeah, we've just had more information coming in from the IDF. Their continued operations against the Iran-backed terror group Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Chief of General Staff has just said that we will end this campaign with not just Iran being struck, but with Hezbollah suffering a devastating blow. This Chief of General Staff has gone on to say the IDF is on the front line defending our communities and striking to remove threats. The protection of residents is our top priority. There will be no further evacuation of communities in Israel. They are not going to remove any Israelis from the north of the country, as they did for tens of thousands at the start of October the 7th, because they are so confident that they can totally eradicate Hezbollah. And this is the live picture of that airstrike that we were just bringing you as the IDF continues its airstrikes in the area. You can see still smoke billowing out of that area. It sounded like two separate strikes on the same location, which is a common strategy for bunker busting bombs, JDAMs that are trying to reach secure underground shelters. One bomb will go in to create an opportunity for a second to follow through and hit into that deeper target. So they say that, the IDF, that their core effort is focused on Iran, but they are operating elsewhere as well, particularly after Hezbollah opened fire last night, those 6 missiles being intercepted or allowed to land in open areas. And I think the question now for the IDF is, where will they go next, Tom and Nana? Because what we're seeing in Yemen, the firing of drones towards Saudi Arabia, highly likely to have come from the Houthis. That could be an expansion of the target range for the IDF if they are going to destroy Iran and all of its proxies, as they're talking about Hezbollah. That will need to extend to the opportunities to fire on Israel and its allies, of course, and partners in the region from Yemen as well. Big questions also for the United Kingdom, as we have this what's been described as a pearl-clutching approach by the Secretary of State for War in the United States, with the UK and other allies being not named, but surely accused by the US of a pearl-clutching approach of worrying more about the law than the nature of war, perhaps. What will this mean for the United Kingdom if we see the Houthis and Hezbollah firing on British interests, on maritime shipping, on the efforts to move oil into the West? We've seen the oil price spiking so significantly already today. All of these points will be rattling around the minds of the generals advising Sir Keir Starmer, and indeed considering the next steps for the British Armed Forces. It seems now in that live shots, we see the smoke passing away from Beirut after that major explosion was heard in the last half an hour or so. I just want to bring you some more news. We're hearing from the French President Emmanuel Macron. He said that he's made an order to increase the number of warheads in the French arsenal. He won't communicate on the number in the future.
This is nuclear warheads.
Nuclear arsenal. This information coming into us just now from the Reuters news agency. Emmanuel Macron, France will increase the size of our nuclear arsenal. This comes, of course, after a French warehouse was targeted in Bahrain, drawing France in some degree into this conflict with Iran. There were reports yesterday that one of its main aircraft carriers was repositioning from the Baltic area down into the Mediterranean to engage with this conflict, to have a presence, to intervene if necessary, after we heard from the so-called E3, Germany, France and Britain, last night saying that they would be open to defensive strikes against Iranian targets to prevent those widespread attacks on Arab and allied nations in the region. So that just coming into us now from the French president. And Italy's foreign minister has said that their contingents, that is, their diplomatic and military assets, are safe in Lebanon and Jordan amid this ongoing operation. I think we could shortly see as well, Nana and Tom, some rather urgent evacuations from whatever missions are left in Lebanon amid this increased strike. The language coming out of the IDF is even more severe and targeted than it was at the height of the conflict with this group when they were targeting Hassan Nasrallah and other leaders of Hezbollah.
All right.
Incredibly significant.
Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Well, let's go live now to our chief political correspondent, Catherine Forster, who has the latest lines from the Prime Minister's spokesperson. Catherine, what more can you tell us?
Yes, well, the government is denying that they have U-turned on this. They're basically saying that the position has evolved. And of course, initially, when the US asked to use British bases to attack Iran, the answer was a very, very firm no. Donald Trump is very disappointed in the Prime Minister for that, but the position has since evolved. Number 10 said there was a clear change in the situation. And basically, it was after that drone was fired at the UK base in Cyprus that the Prime Minister gave that statement last night saying, yes, we will allow the US to use our military bases and there will be some UK involvement. The difference is when it was a question of can we use your bases, the US was saying to attack Iran, the government were worried about the legality of that. So they said that the answer was no. But now the argument is that this is to defend their own citizens in the region. There's about 200,000 British people in the Middle East at the moment who are potentially vulnerable, and also, of course, our own armed forces, because on Saturday there was, we are told, a narrow miss of British personnel in Bahrain. Number 10 is saying, though, that they want to prioritise de-escalation. And they're talking about possible evacuation. They're saying they're looking at every option, and 100,000 people have already registered themselves with the UK government. At the moment, the advice is to shelter in place, but we know now that airspace beginning to open up and some flights should be coming tomorrow. We're also told, in terms of petrol, no reported impacts to the UK's fuel supply. And for Donald Trump being disappointed with the Prime Minister, Number 10 has brushed that off, simply saying the US and the UK are staunch allies. And what has changed is Iran striking British interests.
All right, Catherine Forster, thank you very much.
Well, we can take you to live pictures now of Beit Shemesh in Israel. This is the site where a missile killed 9 people in Israel in the last 24 hours. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, is there on site visiting some of the devastation that can be seen in these live pictures.
So that is breaking news. Benjamin Netanyahu in Beit Shemesh, the place where 9 people were killed from an attack.
Well, of course, we're bringing you more on this conflict as it engulfs the wider Middle East. Of course, not just Iran, but Gulf states, Israel, Beirut, Saudi Arabia. Charlie Peters, our national reporter, is with us in the studio. Charlie.
We're just having some confirmation from a Cyprus source with regards to some of the assessment we've made about those drones fired towards RAF at Kratiri in Cyprus last night. That source in Cyprus saying that all indications suggest that drones were fired by Hezbollah in Lebanon. So some confirmation of what has been assessed by many last night. That does raise further questions now for Sir Keir Starmer, if that is further affirmed by other analysts and sources in the region, because that is very much a case of an Iranian asset firing on British personnel in an area where they are very limited in their defences. There's one fully operational destroyer capable of intervening in these cases. I think that's HMS Duncan, but it's currently tied up in Portsmouth. So what can be done to intercept these ballistic missiles?
Now, it looks like Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, is preparing to say some words. If he does bring them, we will, of course, bring those to you. Let's see if we can listen in. Of course, Israel, an important partner in the region, going after Hezbollah in Lebanon, which we now assume to have launched those missiles. Let's listen in. Oh, it's not in English. I do apologise. We'll bring you, of course, a translation of what he says in due course. But Britain and Israel have drifted as partners and of allies in recent years. Of course, Sir Keir Starmer roundly condemned by the Netanyahu administration in Israel for preemptive recognition of a Palestinian state before there had been a sort of territorial agreement, or indeed a wider peace agreement in Israel and, of course, those Palestinian territories. Interesting, therefore, that we have this estrangement between the United Kingdom and Israel when it's the United Kingdom that will now be relying on Israel in order to take out some of those terror cells that launched those drones that attacked our Air Force base, or one of our 2 Air Force bases in Cyprus.
Well, I mean, there are some reports, although they're not confirmed, but Iranian guards claim that the latest missile attacks have targeted the office of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the headquarters of the Israeli Air Force commander. The office of the criminal prime minister of the regime that they talk about, that they feel that he should be targeted. But look, this is the latest that we have so far on this. We'll confirm that in due course.
Of course, the security of the wider region has implications for security at home. It's not just our air bases and indeed assets in the region that are under threat. It's also our economy. And people will be thinking about the price of oil, the price of gas, and frankly, the wider inflation implications this has. The price of borrowing, too. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, tomorrow is going to be making a statement on the state of the finances. This may well have some negative consequences.
Well, joining us now, former member of the Israeli Parliament and author, Dr. Einet Wilf. Einet, thank you very much for joining us. So we've just seen pictures of Benjamin Netanyahu in Beit Shemesh, where, of course, that attack killed 9 people. How are the Israeli people faring up on this?
This time, the Home Command is far better organized. We're also seeing that the capabilities of the Islamic Republic are much degraded. They're also lashing out at their Arab neighbors and in many ways directing much more of their ballistic missiles to the Gulf countries. But the mood in Israel is one of determination. It's much more a mood of finish the job in terms of ensuring that the Islamic Republic ends its reign of terror, that an ideology and a whole country that was allowed to be organized around the truly stupid and destructive ideas of death to America, death to Israel, will come to an end. Israelis also remember very well who stood with them, not just for the last 2,500 years, but for the last 2.5 years. And those were Iranian exiles in the diaspora, pretty much the only people who came to stand with the Jewish people after October 7th, after the global assault on Jewish life was launched in the name of anti-Zionism. We saw people in Iran, even though that was dangerous, stand with the people of Israel. So Israelis feel that if running to the shelters, even sacrificing, means that ultimately the people of Iran will be free of the Islamic Republic, it will have been worth it.
Fascinatingly now, it's not just the Americans and the Israelis who are shooting down Iranian missiles. It's also Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria and the UAE. I mean, the most remarkable coalition of Arab and Israeli forces fighting towards the same ends now in this region. What does this mean for wider peace?
Iran has done, or the Islamic Republic has done more in the last 2 days to bring many Arab countries in the Middle East together with Israel than many other supposed peacemakers have done over decades. I mean, it used to be said that the Iranians are expert chess players. And maybe they are, but the Islamic Republic clearly is not. What we're seeing is not some expertise chess playing. We're just seeing a petulant regime on its last breath, essentially throwing over the board, lashing out in every direction, from Cyprus to Kuwait to the UAE. And it's not just the attacks on the Gulf countries, it's also the nature of the attacks. The attacks on the symbols of Arab and Islamic prosperity in the Gulf. You really see an ideological battle here. The attack on the symbols of tolerance, prosperity in the UAE are attacks by the Islamic Republic on...
Dr. Einet, apologies for interrupting, but we just got to go live to Benjamin Netanyahu.
The tyrants of Tehran target civilians. We target the tyrants of Tehran to protect civilians. I've said for many years that they threaten not only Israel and not only America. They chant death to Israel, death to America. That's their ultimate target. But I said that they would also target those in between, that they would target Europe. They did. And if this regime this terrorist regime of the kind we've never seen in the world, if they get nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them, ballistic missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they will threaten all of humanity. So we set out to protect ourselves, but in so doing, we protect many others. And I want to say special thanks to our great friend and a great leader of the world, Donald Trump, for joining us in this crucial effort to save the world. Thank you.
Each day said this war is expanding. How do you see it? Prime Minister, you spoke to the Indian Prime Minister. You spoke to the Indian Prime Minister.
Their remarks from Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, speaking in English just at the end of that impromptu press conference, saying, of course, that his aim was to protect Israel, but the United States and Europe by extension.
All right, let's bring back Dr. Einet Wilf. Apologies for that, Einet. We just had to get him on because he was speaking in English and earlier he was speaking in Israeli. Now, I just want to ask you, look, you said earlier, finish the job. How will you know when the job is finished? And also, has Israel finished the job in Gaza? Because that seems to be going on as well.
In terms of Iran, it's very clear. The Islamic Republic, we will know that the job is done when the people of Iran have taken back their country, ending the reign of the Islamic Republic. I personally think that Iran actually, it's not Afghanistan, it's not Iraq. It has a highly educated population with a substantial, if strained, middle class. Just like the joke that if you want to create avowed capitalists, make sure they grow up in the Soviet Union. If you want to create secularists who are opposed to any idea and have no romantic notions of Islamism, make sure they grow up under the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I think Iran, under a democracy, a constitutional monarchy, has a great future ahead, which will transform the entire region, the Middle East, West Asia. So that is what we mean by finish the job. You asked about Gaza. The same issue is here. Ultimately, the ideology has to go. It's not enough just to talk about disarming. The same with the Islamic Republic. People talk about ballistic missiles or nukes. But ultimately, the question is ballistic missiles or nukes in the service of what ideology? It's the ideology that is the problem. And the same in Gaza. I've come to term this ideology Palestinianism, meaning this singular obsession with the non-existence of a Jewish state, the prioritization of destroying what the Jews have built over building for themselves. It is not enough to disarm Hamas of the metal. Ultimately, the ideology that gave birth to various violent organizations like Hamas over the decades, that ideology has to go and to be marginalized so that the Arabs of Gaza, the Arabs of the West Bank can finally live and pursue a positive vision. And for that, the destructive ideology has to go.
Well, Dr. Einet Wilf, author and former member of the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Really significant goings-on there in the Middle East.
Right, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, GB News understands Dubai airspace has just reopened, with Emirates set to begin Middle East evacuations and the first Heathrow flight now expected tomorrow morning. More on that after this.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power.
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Breaking news in the last hour, Dubai Airspace is reopening to allow flights to depart. The first flights to London Heathrow are expected tomorrow morning.
Significant news for the many Brits stuck in the region. Let's speak now to our national reporter, Jack Carson, who's at Heathrow Airport for us. Jack, what more can you say?
Well, it's a welcome relief for, I'm sure, many of those passengers that have been stranded in Dubai over the past 24 and 48 hours. Let me bring you the statement that we've got from Emirates in the last hour or so. They've said that they will begin operating a limited number of flights commencing this evening. They say they're accommodating customers with earlier bookings as a priority, and those who've been rebooked to travel on these limited flights will be contacted directly by Emirates. They say, please do not go to the airport unless you have been notified. They note as well that all other flights remain suspended until further notice, and they continue to monitor the situation as they develop their operational schedule accordingly. They say the safety and security of our passengers and crew remain the highest priority. So that is a welcome relief for those in Dubai. Certainly in other parts of the region, the latest that we've got from Etihad Airways, who we know are also had suspensions and flight cancellations. They say all scheduled commercial flights to and from Abu Dhabi remain cancelled. There had been some flights appearing to leave, but they say that is some repositioning cargo and repatriation flights may operate in coordination with United Arab Emirates authorities, subject to strict operational and safety approval. Now, it'll be the details of those repatriation flights that, of course, are being looked at by those people stranded out there, but also operationally from the Foreign Office, how exactly they get these, what is apparently 100,000 people who have registered their presence in the region. That means that they've given the Foreign Office contact details that they can contact them by. It also means that they've been signing up for updates as part of that, registering their presence from the Foreign Office. The advice, if you're still out there, is still to check Foreign Office websites. As you can imagine, the situation is changing constantly. But in the last few moments, we've also had confirmation that Germany has announced that it will send planes to the Middle East to evacuate its 30,000 stranded German tourists in the Gulf region. They say, their foreign minister saying they want to help Germans get home, saying that the planes will fly out of Muscat in Oman and Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. So that's important to note that that is where Germany say they're going to get their stranded citizens out from. So interestingly, whether the UK may well follow suit in using those kinds of areas. Muscat in Oman, we thought earlier in the day might be a possible option, as well as Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. All of these operational planning is having to be done around the ever-changing conditions on the airspace above those nations with the current situation going on. Of course, this is consistently fluid. Just because flights can continue now does not mean that is a case that's going to happen continually for the next few days. Obviously, this will be forever changing, but we know the government's message today was to sign up to register your presence in the region so that Foreign Office know where you are, that you're there. Their advice to many people is to continue to stay indoors and wait, of course, to be contacted either by your airline if flights and your airspace is open again and can go ahead, or wait for further Foreign Office travel advice. Up to 300,000 Brits could be in the Gulf region. We believe it's somewhere between 200 and 300,000 people there. Only more than 100,000 have registered their presence, suggesting to the Home Office they would be looking for a way to get back. But realistically, with no other kind of assets for the UK militarily-wise in the region, other than, say, being able to use commercial or other flights, certainly no kind of naval presence to support in any kind of repatriation that way. This is, of course, as you can imagine, causing much of an operational headache for the Foreign Office as to how they get what could be 100,000 Brits out of the region safely.
Of course, a big concern for people who are stuck in the region. I mean, there has been a lot of uncertainty over the course of the last 48 hours. I suppose this will be coming as a relief to many of those stuck, but thank you indeed for being there at Heathrow Airport for us and bringing us that latest news.
I think I'd be very, very nervous of getting on a flight, just given the situation, but it is good that people are able to leave the region and hopefully they will arrive back in the UK safely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you indeed for watching us here on Good Afternoon Britain. But don't move a muscle, because there is much, much more news in this highly uncertain and developing situation. Martin Daubney is up next.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Tomorrow, a somewhat cloudier day across southern parts, but plenty of sunshine elsewhere. It will be a bit of a cold start, especially across the north, thanks to this cold front introducing fresher conditions. Low pressure to the north, and these weather fronts providing plenty of showers into western Scotland. Quite wet and windy here for a time. The winds quite lively today across Northern Ireland. They will slowly ease, and then this weather front, this cold front, just really a band of cloud with some rain at the moment, but that rain kind of fizzling out as we go through the night. It doesn't get to East Anglia in the southeast. Some clearer skies here will allow some mist and even a few fog patches to form. Temperatures holding up here, but as I said, a cold start across the north with some pockets of frost likely over northern England, Scotland, and especially Northern Ireland in rural areas. Not quite so frosty in the far north, because here we'll keep a fairly brisk wind, and a few showers will continue to feed in across the Northern Isles for Tuesday morning. One or two over the Highlands, but generally a much drier day and a less windy day in western Scotland. Much of Scotland, Northern Ireland starting the day dry. Touch of frost, as I said, but with plenty of sunshine. Whereas after plenty of sunshine today, it will be a cloudier day over the Midlands and southern parts of England. Still that cloud thick enough for maybe a little bit of light rain and drizzle over the Midlands, South Wales during the morning. Mist and fog should clear away from the southeast, and skies will brighten here, but as I said, cloudier than today. Still a few showers perhaps in Shetland, but most of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England looking dry, fine and sunny. The wind's a lot lighter, temperatures 9 or 10 Celsius. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. Those numbers about average. Further south, a little bit milder than average, but a little bit cooler than today. But with some brightness, we could still get to 15 or 16 across the southeast. Tuesday evening, not a great deal of change. The cloud just increasing a little bit. But overall this week, a lot of dry weather around, some good spells of sunshine, getting quite warm, especially on Thursday in the east.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could be the proud owner of a brand new Benivan 122. This very latest 2026 model comfortably sleeps 4, comes complete with built-in kitchen, compact washroom, and is worth over £67,000. But that's not all, as we'll also give you a further £25,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like in the coming year. For a chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
I've got some stuff for you guys to make your own pancakes.
I'm still trying to
And
deal
you've
with
got
the
all of
chilli
our favourite
in the
things.
dark.
I was told that you like a hazelnut chocolate spread.
Yes, very well done. Yes, a hazelnut chocolate spread.
With some
You need to try this.
bananas.
Yes, this is my favourite.
For you, Eamon, I made some. I got